For the record, I'm Bruce Warner, the president of the TriMet Board of Directors, and we're here in Clackamas County, and in an effort to ensure we stay connected with the communities we serve, the TriMet Board of Directors has been holding some of its monthly business meetings around the Tri-County metropolitan area. We're really happy to be in one of the great communities we serve as we work to engage our communities more. We're in Director Prosser's district, and so I'm going to turn it over to him. So would you like to maybe do some introductions of some of the speakers we have coming this morning?
Okay. Welcome, everybody. Glad to see you here. I think it's important for TriMet to get out and around the region more. Most of our meetings are in Portland, and that's harder for people in more distant from downtown, but not less important areas to make it to our meetings. So I think it's these rotations that we've been doing, I think have been very beneficial. I'm very happy to welcome the board and to Clackamas County. A lot of fun and interesting things going on here. It's really good to see the things that are happening. We do have several folks here who will be addressing us, and let's see, we have Philip King from Clackamas Community College. Is Carlotta Colette here?
She's ill, is my understanding.
Oh, okay. Doug Neely, the mayor of Oregon City, and John Ludlow, the chair of the Clackamas County Commission. So they'll be coming up and speaking. So welcome to everybody. Glad you're here.
Yeah. Thank you all. So let's get right into it then. So the first speaker that we have on the list is, as was mentioned, Dean of Academic Foundations and Connections here at Clackamas County Community College, Mr. Philip King. Are you out there? Okay, good. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning to you. There were several of us getting ready to speak, so we were all trying to decide who might be available this week, but I appreciate you all being here today. Interestingly, last week I was downtown at Metro advocating for a grant for us to be able to provide additional services to our students. We operate a free shuttle, and it's something that's come up in the recent past that's of high need for our students, but I'll get back to that. I think the thing for you to hear from us as a college is that as we've grown over the years, and the college has grown quite a bit up on top of the hill, as I discovered it 4 years ago when I came here to work, that was the sleepy little college that grew up on the hill that no one kind of knew about and surprised us. And here we are, and when I got here in 2010, we'd approached about 9,000 FTE. That's about equivalent to 9,000 students per year full-time. But we dropped a little bit since then, as all colleges have. And in that time, though, we've also discovered who we are as an institution as we continue to redevelop. And of that 9,000 equivalent FTE, a predominant amount is part-time students. A predominant amount of our students as we're looking at responding to compact issues at the state and realizing how we have to report who we are part-time students, students of backgrounds that are very low socioeconomic. So when we're reporting out, when we have a very high percentage of students, approaching 40%, who would be in the low SES or other race ethnicity category, who potentially don't have access to resources. So they're the students who access things like our Pell Grants, high loan options, and who need access to education, so they come to us through whatever means they can get to us. And as we've discovered also in our last couple years, we've done quite a bit of community engagement. This past year, our Dean of College Advancement, Shelley Perini, did a community engagement campaign, reaching out to our community and our students. Several hundred people participated. A major outcome of that is information from our community directly about the things they need from the college and the kinds of things they want to see. Transportation comes up extremely high on that list, and in a way that suggests that we absolutely want access to you as a college. We want access. We love that you do online education. That's not for everybody. We want to come there in person. We want to see your instructors. We want to participate in your programs. But it's hard for us to get there. Situated where we are in Clackamas County. And serving the district that we do, which is heavily rural, people want to get to us, and they encounter great difficulty getting here. So of course, one of the options that we've discovered that's grown slowly is that while the Green Line appeared, I was out of the state for about 7-8 years, and when I was out of the state on the East Coast, the Green Line got finished and started depositing people at Clackamas Town Center. And when people get off the Green Line at Clackamas Town Center, they can get a bus, and they can get a bus that comes up to the college, but it takes them 90 minutes to get here because it doesn't go directly. And if you're a student and you need to get to class quickly, that's a long commute. And I've done that before when I lived on the East Coast, and you don't have any other option, so you study. So it's a long time to study to get to the college, especially for our largely part-time students who are doing many other things, and they can't necessarily afford the time to get all the way here. So when we discovered that, we worked with some partners and developed a process to go out for bid and got a shuttle company to work with us. That shuttle company now provides a service to and from the Green Line to the college. It's a 20-minute route. It operates about 7 hours a day on one of the lines. In the past 9 months, we've reconfigured that, where we expanded service to include our secondary campus at Harmony, even though that's kind of just a hop away from Clackamas Town Center. We expanded service there, and we also expanded service into the evening partially. Each time we've expanded service, because of our interesting network and where our students are coming from, they didn't immediately respond, but within a couple weeks they've responded. We started 2.5, 3 years ago with ridership about 200 students a week. In the fall, we had 650 rides per week. And you know, it's open to anybody, so employees could take it as well, but predominantly it is our students who are riding it. Each time we go out then to ask for more information. As we did 3 weeks ago, we asked and were inquired about the service. Our Harmony students who were at the secondary campus responded very quickly. We had about 150 responses telling us what we were doing right, mostly what we were doing wrong, but they responded.
That one, by the way.
What's that?
We understand that one.
Yeah. But they were appreciative that we kept asking. And so we were able to then finesse the service and be able to get the students up to campus. You know, as we're approaching next year, we were co-funding that venture through JARC funds, a grant opportunity that was ending. And as we're looking to the future, we were paying for portions of it ourselves as a college, raised through student fees. So we actually are charging all students to use that service, and then co-funded. The grant is ending, so we're having to figure out a way to continue to fund that at the current time, because it's such a high need for our students to get here on time and to get to the other places they need to be in their lives to you know, be able to pay food, to get food to put on the table and take care of their families and things of that nature. I recently was able to go down to Metro and advocate for continuation of that, of those funds that may still be available. We're not sure. If they're not, we're going to have to identify a way to keep that service going. We're also undertaking a small research project ourselves through a Portland State fellow who will be trying to identify transportation options in the district. So maybe he'll be reaching out to you, including who are all our partners, how we're partnering with the city, free options that we have, other options as we continue to, as a city, grow and as a college grow with that city. So we're looking forward to the outcomes of that research. I'm not sure what it might tell us other than everything we're doing wrong. I don't know. But we're looking forward to that as we continue to advocate for our students. As we look forward to what we're doing here as a college, we are currently situated at about 7,500 FTE, which is down from the 9,000 I stated before. Very similar to what's going on in the state with other community college and student populations and what they're, you know, advocating for and asking for. But we're not necessarily seeing a decrease in demand for the basic essential services that we provide and the essential services that for people to need transportation to come to the college to seek out their educational opportunities. So we see a future where we will continue to hone our services to become better and better as an institution providing education to students both face-to-face, which is still extremely important, and online. And I think it's extremely valuable that you're here today to hear our story a little bit of what I can tell you. and what we want for our future and how you might be a part of that future.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First, before we leave, is there some questions or comments from the board? Yeah.
Sure.
How much money are you looking for? I'll cut to the chase.
How much money are you looking for?
The bus,
Your
the shuttles.
The shuttle is, excuse me, it's about $100,000 a year.
And you're hoping to get some of that from Metro? Is that how?
Yeah, it's, just
I'm not an expert in this.
finishing out a grant. Yeah, there's a grant that, for whatever reason, it has left over, a $1.5 million carryover that they're trying to redistribute. And so we were there already receiving. They asked for the current, those recipients to come back and ask, and we asked again, so, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And the shuttle goes from the Green Line to here as well as to your Harmony
Correct.
Road?
And we actually added in the fall, so we actually have 2 shuttles running. One goes Green Line Harmony College and keeps that route going. The other one goes directly from the Green Line to the college. So there's 2 in operation throughout the day.
So physically, the end of the Green Line in Harmony College is how far away? Ballpark.
End of the Green Line to, it's about 9 miles.
Oh.
Either, yeah, to Harmony is something like half a mile.
Okay.
And then from the Green Line to the college, that was about 9 miles.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
So your message is, again, transit's important to the college, and you're stepping up and doing some things on your own, which we really appreciate, because it is a partnership that we need to work on with you and others to get folks where they need to go. I do want you to know, I heard a number of comments this morning about how wonderful the facilities are here.
Yeah.
And so, again, congratulations to you and your organization for the work you do out here. And it sounds like you're growing, and we heard that from a lot of the community college campuses. So continue to do what you're doing, and we look forward to working with you in the future on
Great.
addressing some of your needs. And if you have time, you might stick around for the discussion on service enhancement, because I think one of the things we're really struggling with is kind of the last mile, as we call it, from the end of the transit station to where people want to go.
Yeah.
It's a little more when you have 9 miles, but I think the concept is the same. How do we start to address that throughout the region?
Yeah. Well, and as you do so, I think one thing that was interesting is, and I'd forgotten this, when we were exploring options, as an interesting district, we serve into West Lynn as well, technically. I'm not sure if they come here, but we do. But it takes 2 hours to get to West Lynn from here. There's no direct, and I'm sure you hear that everywhere. You got to go into the city to come out of the city. And so even though they're just a hop away, not if you're on bus. And so they wouldn't come here if they're on a bus, because it takes too long to get here. But we might be their first provider. They might think of us that way, but they can't get here.
Gotcha.
So.
Director Esmond?
So do you have any idea how many, since you have the buses, if you didn't have them, how many people would drive? What I'm saying is, how many cars are sitting home because of the bus service?
We haven't necessarily asked specifically that question. I think it's part of the outreach we want to do with the fellow that we're picking up from Portland State University.
Okay.
Kind of hit it all and ask that question.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you again for
Thank you.
coming. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks.
So I think as you heard from Craig that Metro Councilor Carlotta Collette is unable to attend because she's ill. But right next in line, we have the mayor of Oregon City, Doug Neely. And I understand Carol, and you have to introduce your counterpart's counselor as a name, because I forgot it from this morning. So welcome.
Well, thank you, and first, welcome to Oregon City, the first incorporated city west of the Rockies, regional center, and also the Clackamas County's seat. Got a population of 33,000 people. It's the second largest city in the county. It's had a very high growth rate over the period of time that we've had expansion after from the mid-90s right to this period of time, one of the fastest growing cities in the state. What I'd like to do, first of all, is to extend my appreciation to both Neil McFarland and Steve Kautz for coming to the City Commission and making a presentation, but also listening to our complaints. And yesterday, Steve Kautz and a couple of members of the TriMet staff came to the Oregon City Business Alliance to talk about the issues, and I really appreciate that form of outreach. We're we're served predominantly by 3 lines, line 32, 33, 99. The previous speaker indicated the service to Clackamas Community College, other than those that can access easily from McLaughlin Boulevard, 99E is poor. But from 99E, basic services that Oregon City has are pretty well served, whether it be the Clackamas County's administrative buildings, or Willamette Falls Hospital, or the college campus, or Red Soils Complex, well served by those lines. What is not well served are the residents of Oregon City. I'm going to ask you, if you would, just to look at the map behind you. I think it's brought down to its lowest point. First thing I want to emphasize is that what you're looking at here in terms of Oregon City is this area here, but you're not seeing all of it. Oregon City's city limits goes much further south than it's indicated on this map. And what you see here are the routes that come down our major arterials, but do not serve our minor arterials in the city at all. We have an area that we're looking here as the South End Concept Plan, and the South End itself, other than a shuttle service, private shuttle service that you've made arrangements for that serves from us into West Lynn to Mary Woods and Merrillhurst up here, it doesn't provide services along 99E without a transfer. It's a shuttle service, and doesn't operate during the major peak hours either. So you see these arterials that are coming in. There's no residential service provided. It's not only an issue for Oregon City, it's an issue for West Lynn and Happy Valley too, but of course I'm here basically representing Oregon City. So these major, I'm going to come back with a few solutions, but I do want to give our commissioner that I've invited up here, City Commissioner Carol Pauley, a chance to talk about lines which have gone out of service or provide poor service. I mentioned the 3 that actually the service is pretty good, but Commissioner Pauley.
Yes, Carol Pauley, Oregon City Commission. We're all here because we care about transportation. Thanks for the opportunity for providing this outreach. It's very important in Oregon City. It's one of our goals to have lots of public input and outreach, and I'm glad to see that you're doing the same. Transportation is relevant to all communities. Oregon City being one of the job centers of the region, it's very relevant to us. Oregon City's seen a lot of changes. So I think it's time to rethink transportation and how we can better serve our citizens as well as the citizens of all the regions. As an Oregon City Commissioner, I think about the needs of our citizens and what we can do to get our citizens around the area. We've seen several new changes since 2009 when the 153 line was cut. And if you look at the map and you look out South End, thank you, Mary Neely. we had a line that went out there and it went to Canby and it did a 7-mile loop. So now we have no service out there, and interestingly enough, that has been the fastest growing part of our city, residential-wise. And we're looking forward to having new jobs, the South End Concept Plan, and planning for our city. And when we plan for a city, we look at transportation, obviously. So as the second fastest growing city in the state last year, our needs have grown and our services have been cut. And I'm sure you've heard this from other cities as well. But here in Oregon City, we want to make sure that we plan for the needs of our citizens. And then also, being a county seat, we have specific needs. And the Clackamas County housing up on the hill in Clackamas Heights has very limited services as well. So, wanting to provide those opportunities for citizens to have choices, to get around in different ways and leave their cars at home if they like. We don't really have those choices. So looking at how we can rethink our system and reutilize our resources to be more effective is very important. So thanks for the opportunity.
First of all, when we mention, am I on?
Yes, you are.
Okay. When we mention the second fastest growing city, we're really talking about kind of a future projection. It was the second largest issuance of building permits. I think the actual population growth statistics doesn't put us in the second top, but in terms of building permits issued this last year, it was the second highest. I wanted to mention one other thing. Did we mention the assisted care issue?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. When you cut this line, we had several assisted care facilities that were located within a mile of that facility. I'm going to make a guess that some of those assisted care facilities came into existence because of the access to the TriMet services that could be delivered. Those were lost. And if nothing else, if you're going to cut lines in the future, I think that's a service that you should not cut along with the cutting of lines. Of course, I'm not recommending you cut any lines, but that is a problem. We also have on Holcomb Boulevard, we've got I think the largest network of public housing in the county, and that is only served by TriMet during the peak hours. So it's a very, very limited service to another major need group. I wanted to talk about some solutions, if I might, or potential solutions. One of them would like to see in the short term. I'm going to direct your focus, if you would, back to the map. We've got an area here, this body of water. This is Clackamas Cove. We've got we have a development agreement to create housing along the south and east banks of that slope. The development agreement calls for 244 garden apartments on the south end and 196 on the east end. We anticipate the building is going to start this year. And your buses, when they come into Oregon City, the last stop they make on 99E is at Dunes Drive, and then they go down and go directly, crossing traffic with no signal, they go directly into the transit center. Well, one of the suggestions I'm going to make is to have your buses that are coming down 99, can include 35 as well as 32, 33, and 99, go down the one block to 99, and it catches the main street, it's not shown here, but the main street extension that goes directly on the same main street that the transit center is located on. One of the best things that you could possibly do is where you have a large collection of residential housing is to have the TriMet service available when those housing units become available so that people get used to using the public transit system immediately. This is a great opportunity for Oregon City because we have mixed-use zoning throughout the rest of Main Street. Much of this land is not heavily developed, and this is one of our Main Street corridors that we're looking at for mixed-use purposes. And of course, one of the reasons for forming these mixed-use corridors is to have it on public transit system. As I say, you're not going to miss any of the current stops by doing it. Maybe you add a couple more in the process, and that is something that we look forward to if you can do it within the next couple of years when these housing units come on. The other thing that, I'm sorry for hitting your eyes there, the other thing that Commissioner Pauly was talking about, it was the closing of the South End Transit Center. We're in the process of approving our South End concept plan, the last of 3 concept plans that we've been working on. It will bring in thousands of residents into this area over the long term. This is a major route for us. But we have a lot of people that are being served, and I don't know what kind of relations that you could work with Canby's bus service, but perhaps you could work out an agreement where rather than Canby's bus services coming off 99E, possibly could come down South End Road and provide services that you've cut. I don't know how that might work out. The other case is on some of these minor arterials that we have that I've been talking about. Can you have circular routes that that you've developed elsewhere that can involve smaller buses that connect into the main corridors there, and to the major arterials where you do have the line service. Those are some of the items that I wish you consider. I think it's great these services come down to Clackamas Community College, but there's really no extension beyond either east where we have developments and including along Beaver Creek, and I'm not sure that I don't know if that's Glen Oak Road or not. Probably is Glen Oak Road, but services out, in this area that could occur too. We got the high school. I think is it the second largest? Is it the largest high school in the state, population-wise? One of the largest high school populations in the state, right adjacent to the campus.
I'd like to kind of jump on that
Go
topic
ahead.
too. There's also been some changes with the school districts. So now we have an open school district. So students could, if they live in Westland, they could opt to go to Oregon City High School or vice versa, or Gladstone High School. So there would be no access route. I have a friend that lives in Portland, and her son was able to take the bus and go to a different high school. You know, high schools are becoming more specialized now. There's different choices, different levels of interest that students can, you know, attend to get the needs that they have. And so by having the district open, it's important to create those opportunities so students can live in one part of the city and have the opportunity to go to high school in another part of the city. So I heard someone's comment about how long it takes to get from Oregon City to West Lynn. So that probably wouldn't be an option for a lot of students. And busy moms like me, you know, we get tired of playing shuttle, you know, taxi shuttle, and it's important too to have opportunities for older students to be more independent and be able to get from point A to point B, and also jobs, you know, working after high school, working jobs. So that's another need. And Mayor Neely, his ideas about getting out into Warner Parrott and some of those other roads that are very densely populated, and also up by the college where you have Glen Oak Road. There's more housing developments going in there, and also denser. We have R6, common wall housing, stuff that we haven't seen so much in Oregon City, is really coming. People's habits are changing. People's needs are changing. Some people are wanting less of a yard to take care of. So I think that's very important. One idea I had is if you did rethink the line that was 153, instead of doing a big sweeping motion, like Mayor Neely said, you could go north to Warner Parrott, east to Leland. You got your marker up there.
East of, I only get here.
South to Myers, east to 213, then north to Clackamas Community College. And it creates a better service than the old 153 line. So again, kind of rethinking what we have, our resources, and just rethinking what we can do. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm going to put in one more thing for West Lynn. This is a big issue for us, as you see. If you could turn around and look at the map, and again, I'm going to circle this tremendous residential area in Oregon City that isn't served, but take a look at West Lynn. Other than coming down, well, it starts in Portland as Macadam, but we call it Willamette here. The area there, very underserved. In fact, not served at all. So I want to thank you very much and giving us the opportunity to speak here, and I think you might hear from some of our staff in a moment too. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. We have one
Oh,
question.
please.
Good.
On that Cove project,
Yes,
that's going to be mixed usage?
yes, it's got a vertical housing credit, and yes, it has to be mixed usage.
And how many businesses do you project to be built?
That's going to
Ballpark?
be, I don't have that answer. Our staff might. I had, of course, the number of apartment units that'll be coming in. But basically the lower floors are going to be for other purposes on the garden apartments, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you so much. Good. All right, and lastly, on our list, we're happy to, again, be here in Clackamas County, where our second light rail extension is under construction and set to open in 2015. And I said hello earlier to Chair John Ludlow, and I want to thank you for having us here in your great county and provide you an opportunity to talk with us this morning. Good. Either one you'd like.
Well, first of all, welcome to Clackamas County.
Thank you.
Clackamas County Board Chair John Ludlow. Just so you note, this is one of my alma maters, Clackamas Community. Glad to say I went here and was part of their proud 1971 National Wrestling Championship team. It's interesting to note, and I know Mayor Neely very well, and Carol, that they note that they are the first city. And as well known, the original plat for the city of San Francisco is on file at Oregon City. And they have since asked for it back, and Oregon City has politely declined. We are the first county. You might remember how big that county was. It is now many, many counties. But the Oregon Territory, of course, ran from British Columbia to down into California, Northern California. It should be noted that Clackamas County, about 380,000 residents, extends from, of course, wonderful Mount Hood and all the way down south of Salem. That's how big this place is. 52% of our land in Clackamas County is owned by the federal government. Lately, that hasn't worked out too well because we used to experience great revenue that would help us do the things we have to do, including transportation needs. You know, we're all looking for efficient, reliable service at the best cost. When I was in Wilsonville and mayor, and before that, very active in the Chamber of Commerce, you know, there was an idea that people had out there, and that was business people who came forward and said, we can do it better, faster, cheaper. They demonstrated that in the creating of SMART. Actually, at that time, when we named it, and I was mayor, my idea was to name it WART, Wilsonville Area Rapid Transit. And that worked for a while until another mayor came along and said SMART is at South Metro Regional Transportation. But they've demonstrated that we can do it better, faster, and cheaper. Dial a ride. Almost everything is free out there. And the idea was to really bring home the dollars that were being paid. Now, in Clackamas County, gentlemen, this year, I think, from our businesses, the income for TriMet is around $37 million. It's projected this next year, it'll be $39 million. And you look at the lines in the map up above you and you say, can we do it better, faster, and cheaper? Now, I've convened, I'm copying Andy Dyke in Washington County, the chair over there. I thought he had a great idea, and I know Mr. Hughes does it as well, but I convened a private meeting with the mayors of Clackamas County. I call it the chair and mayor's meeting. At that time, I said, you know, are you interested in whether somebody can do it better, faster, and cheaper? And 5 cities spoke up and have since confirmed their interest in studying that. I'm here representing the board who said that I requested this permission to tell you that we are going to engage a study to find out if we can do it better, faster, and cheaper. You look up that map, and certainly you talk about Clackamas County, and I realize that TriMet does not cover all of Clackamas County. But you look at places where you don't serve right now, which are needed. We have the Mountain Express. We believe in transportation. We have the Mountain Express, which runs from Sandy to Timberline Lodge when you're able. We believe in that, and it's necessary. A lot of employees at Timberline now just ride from Sandy up there. It's a lot easier, and they can play with their cell phones while they still have service. But, you know, you think about that area, you think about Colton, you think about the far reaches of Clackamas County. Imolala's on their own now, not part of TriMet. Sandy also, Canby, Wilsonville. So it begs the question, if we helped, if we looked at it, if we had partners that would encourage our look at this, and that's all it is currently. 5 cities who say, you know, we need help because we're not getting the service we need to. It is, you know, the board's position that you have too much emphasis on capital-intensive projects at the expense of your bus service. You just talked, you know, Oregon City has talked about what they're losing, what they need. Beyond all that, yesterday when I was at the Oregon City Business Alliance meeting, And it's always nice not to have to chair a meeting. I'm sure you'll agree with that, Bruce. Sometimes it's just nice to sit back and listen to people and ask them questions. We had very appropriate and informed TriMet representatives there. And they said, you know, this enhanced lines that we're going to help with to gather in more people from collectors and arterials and bring them down to where they want to go. You heard about some of the times that it takes to go from here to there, and it certainly isn't getting better as bus services are cut. But I was the one that asked, I always ask, what's this going to cost, and who pays for this new enhancement? Now, I think, again, appropriately, your staff said, we don't know that yet, that's another study. But the point of the matter is if there's only a few ways you can get additional monies. And one is fare increases, and I bet those people with the signs have something to say about that. I'm just guessing here, all right? So everybody in favor of fare increases, raise your hand. Well, there you go. So the point of the matter is, you know, we, the public, are very concerned about your debt, your model, your business model. How can it sustain itself? If you just take let's just call it $1 billion, because I know it's more. $1 billion in debt you really are because of deals you made to unions or whatever, and I'm certain not to saying put this debt on the unions' back. But you think about $1 billion in debt, and you say, how are we supposed to pay that off? And I see no plan from anybody. I realize you're appointed by the governor. I would ask him to appoint me to the board, but I don't think he'd do it. Because somebody has to have ownership of that $1 billion. Somebody has to say, we owe it. You think about projects like the Columbia River Crossing. You think about transportation, i.e. the commuter rail from Eugene to Vancouver, and our portion of the cost, if the feds go in on it, our portion of the state is $600 million. That puts it in perspective what $1 billion is. So we challenge you to say how you're going to pay that off. Because I think everybody's waiting for the rescue from the state of Oregon, because, I mean, they appoint your board, and they certainly have some rules of operation, I'm sure. But somebody has to take ownership and responsibility for that $1 billion. As for Clackamas County, we don't think we're responsible. Some of our cities have really the lack of good service. There's not the frequency that people really need. You talk about Clackamas Community College. You heard how long it takes. Is that great service, outstanding service within the region? No, it is not. We're worried about debt loads, we're worried about retiree health care obligations, and we're worried about your ability to continue to provide adequate service, just adequate service in the long run. I mean, I appreciate that negotiations are tough with the Amalgamated Transit Union, I believe it is, and, you know, and getting concessions from them. But that's small, and that will only put a Band-Aid on one of the 1,000 cuts you have. And so stem the tide of bleeding is one thing, but the original amount, the amount that's continuing to increase, has to be addressed. I can't emphasize that enough. So it makes us all fearful. The Clackamas County Board of Commissioners, certainly the cities, they're going, how is this model sustainable? And it really is not without a huge influx of public funds. So we will study whether all or part of Clackamas County might be served better following our own path, similar to the cities that I've mentioned that have already withdrawn. We realize that there may be legislative barriers to doing this kind of thing, but since I was elected, and the reason I was elected is because I've always believed that certain things people need to vote on. You can call it Selwood Bridge, you can call it urban renewal, you can call it light rail, and more recently, the other CRC, our Clackamas Regional Center urban renewal, where there's $48 million to be disposed of, and I believe that's the public's money, the taxpayers' money. In the same sense here, I believe that if we had a vote in Clackamas County as to the efficiency of TriMet and their service and their operations, it wouldn't go well for you. There's a new survey out, and Hibbets et al., funded by public entities about public trust. The public doesn't trust public entities, government, institutions. They don't trust them. I mean, I think the approval rate was like 17 or 18%. So we all have a battle in the eyes of the public to rise up to the level that they expect out of us. And one is financial sustainability, and two is the service you provide. Every year, when we survey the people of Clackamas every 2 years, Clackamas County, they say public safety is number one. Public safety is a lot of things, the DA, corrections, the court systems, et cetera. But number two is roads. That's how important roads are, is that people still drive on them, you see. And even though the emphasis and the push has been for so long to get people out of those selfish, single-occupied vehicles and get into mass transit, well, it hadn't worked too well. And I still like the idea that people would have the right to decide what they do and not to allow our freeways to continue to clog. So getting back to, again, the central point here, we appreciate the work that you do with the constraints that you have. We would hope that some of the input here put today by Oregon City, just one of our cities, would help you, guide you towards decision-making where you can better serve the people who really pay. We know it's the businesses, and people solicit those businesses, but we need better and more outstanding service in Clackamas County, and we're going to look for a way to provide that fiduciarily to our customers, clients, patrons, taxpayers, stakeholders, if you will. Do you have any questions for me after that?
Questions, comments from the board? Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you very much for your
I
time.
will say before you leave,
Yes.
we welcome independent review. We're always looking at ways to provide service better, so please have at it. We look forward to the analysis and working
Should I have
together.
John Charles set his outline on how you could pay back $1 billion?
Well, first off, Mr. Chair, I need to take you to task a bit. I think you need to look very carefully at our debt load. This board is very, very concerned about debt load. We have policies that say our debt shall not exceed 7.5% of our operating budget. I think we're actually at about 5% now, 3.8. Excuse me, 3.8% of our budget right now is for debt. And so we believe we've planned that very carefully. We have the resources to pay for it. And so we hope that when Mr. Charles and you take a look at this.
We're not together on anything,
Okay,
sir.
well, I'm just saying,
mentioned
if
his name
you're
'cause-
looking at the numbers, look at the real numbers as opposed to aggregate numbers and numbers that really don't mean anything until you look at how those monies are actually being paid.
Thank you. I appreciate
Thank
your
you very
guidance.
much.
Have a
bet.
nice day.
All right. I think that concludes our invited guests this morning. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Did you have something to say? Okay. Okay. Director Bethel asked that I recognize the mayor of Lake Oswego. He was here earlier. Is he here now, today? Or I think he must have had to take off. So again, I just want to make sure we saw him earlier and want to thank him for his attendance too. All right, so we cut into our normal time for public forum, so we're not going to penalize those who are available here and wanted to talk to us in the public forum. So we're going to begin the public forum right now. It's about 12 minutes till 10 my time. We're going to go for 45 minutes. I have 20 people who've signed up for the public forum at this time. So I'm going to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to testify, I'm going to limit the testimony to 2 minutes. Again, if we have time at the end, we can see if anybody else wants to provide testimony. So I'm going to start right into the list right now. I'm going to call you up 2 at a time, all right? So the first 2 is Maurice Raming and Mike Degliantoni. Is that right? Please come up. Maurice, I know you. Please have a seat. Is Mike here? Oh, good. There he is. Right. Good morning.
Morning.
Please proceed.
I'm Maurice Raming. I'm president of O'Neill Electric. We're a small minority and disadvantaged business enterprise. One of the things that I want to just touch base on is how beneficial TriMet actually has been for not only the minority community, minority workforce, minority contractors working on their projects, but they really have changed the landscape in construction. A lot of construction projects are still pretty much set that there's barriers of entry for a lot of our firms that look like us, both on the women and minority side, and the small businesses. TriMet in their process, the way that they work through their projects, have been probably the most inclusive I've seen in my 16 years of doing contracting and my 20 years of doing construction. They've had included us to have the opportunity to bid projects. There's a lot of large projects that go on throughout our state, and that the opportunities are not open to small businesses. By that, opportunities in which you guys have created allowed our business to grow. We pay more taxes, we employ more people, we are able to diversify our workforce that resembles the state. And so I know that there's a lot of people waiting, but I just wanted to sit there and applaud you for what you're doing on the construction side. You are leaders. You are changing the landscape, and you are having it so that there's more inclusion for people, both on the minority, women, and emerging small businesses. And I'd just like to say that through your staff and those that I've met with TriMet, that is always on the forefront, is how do we include, how do we actually supply the community's input, just like this forum, and not just do things through a closed door process or not allowing people to have their voice. So I just wanted to voice that what I've seen with working with TriMet, that's a good thing, it's working, and I appreciate the opportunities that you have given my business. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice, for coming. Thank you. Mike?
Good morning. My name is Mike Delantoni. I work with Emmerich Construction Company. We're a general contractor here in Clackamas County. We have been in business for over 70 years. It's our 71st year throughout that. We have had a lot of projects that we've done with TriMet throughout the years. Specifically, the last 4 or 5 years, we've had multiple contracts. Done a lot of bus stop safety improvements, worked on the Portland-Milwaukee light rail. Just wanted to come in and just talk about our relationship with you guys. It's been a very positive one, always has been. I've always been fair and reasonable to work with. And it's also been a nice feather in our cap to have work that we can do and perform that's within our county, something that our workers who live in the surrounding counties can come and be proud of. Every time that we've worked, like I said, we've done numerous projects throughout the years. No matter whom we've worked with, it's always been a positive experience. So I just kind of want to come in and express that and say thank you for letting me come. So.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments? All right, thank you both for coming today. I appreciate it. All right, I'm going to move on then. The next two are Glenn Gorson and Keith Schultz. And Keith's got his raincoat on today. And I think you needed it.
Yeah. You want to go ahead? Okay. Good morning. I'm Keith Schultz, an Opal member and the elected chair of the Bus Riders Unite Leadership Committee. So I'm here to speak both for myself and for everyone that I represent. But let's start with me. I live in Gresham, and I got on transit at 6 o'clock this morning to eventually ride the 33 bus from downtown Portland to get to this meeting. Did anyone else in this room ride the bus to get here? I was hopeful that we would be here today celebrating the passage of Ordinance Number 332, the transfer time extension proposed by TriMet that didn't give riders what we need or ask for, but is a step in the right direction. BRU and other riders have been trying to explain the need for longer transfers for over 3 years, and you clearly haven't heard us. Because the longer you delay, the more we suffer. I have personally spoken with many transit-dependent bus and MAX riders who feel they need longer transfers. This is especially true on weekends, evenings, and holidays, when transit runs on a less frequent schedule. But you must understand that it's not just about frequency or quality of service, it's about high fares and affordability. In a perfect world, a rider could get their errands done on the current 2-hour fare. But in the real world, it rarely works that way, and it's unjust to force riders to buy a day pass for just a short errand. I've even talked to riders who had to buy a day pass just to pick up a gallon of milk. I know that this isn't your world or experience, but it's ours. Many people who depend on TriMet to live their lives can't wait for all this political delay. We need a transfer extension now. So I have a proposal of my own for you. Just give me a minute. To learn how important longer transfer times are, would you, as the Board of Directors, forego the use of your other transportation options for 1 week? Just 1 week, and then pretend you were poor and try to use 2-hour tickets to do all of your daily trips, not just for your commute to work. I think you would be surprised at what the rest of us deal with every day. And please, don't give me the excuse that you were busy. We are busy too, and our time is just as valuable. And in fact, don't give me any excuses at all. Just do it for 1 week with only 2-hour fares, and I think you'll start to understand the change we need. And if not, then it's time to change this board instead. Thank you for your time.
Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Glenn Kierson. I live in Malino, south of here. I serve on the Aging Services Advisory Council for Clackamas County, the Mental Health and Addictions Advisory Council. I also serve on TriMet Special Transportation Funding Advisory Council. And I recently just completed 2 years working on Clackamas County's transportation plan for the next 20 years. So I have some interest and background in transportation. In aging services, in mental health, transportation always comes close to the top of issues. And I would suggest to you that the future is aging. And I think we all need to be aware of that because we all know the demographics. The highest growth demographics is over 85. 10,000 people in the United States are turning 65 every day. So we have to start thinking about what that future is going to look like. We know that people want to age in their homes and in their communities. They don't want to move unless they absolutely have to some facility. Some of the barriers are access to shopping, barriers to staying in your home, services, and social opportunities. The accessible transportation for those no longer able to drive. I think we probably all know somebody that's not been able to drive. They've had their license taken away, or the doctor has suggested they not drive anymore. Some of the opportunities is plan transportation for livable communities. Encourage grouping shopping, services, housing, medical facilities in a group where people can get there without having to travel long distances. And we also, a very simple thing is ensure safe access to transportation stops, shelters, sidewalks, signs that people can read, big enough that if your eyesight not as good as it was a few years ago, that you can see. In summary, I just want to say, I would encourage you to encourage your planners to think about livable communities and how they might address the needs of the aging as you plan forward for your transportation needs. Thank you.
Good comments. Good comments. Thank you very much for coming. The next two are Jessica Reyes and Nicole Phillips. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Jessica, please.
Hi, members of the TriMet Board. My name is Jessica Reyes. I'm here today representing Líderes Verdes and Cooley Neighborhood Organization. I have lived in Portland region almost all my entire life. Over the last years, I have seen the TriMet system get worse and worse. Not only have prices risen year after year, but the quality of the bus service has decreased year after year. And the bus drivers you have hired to transport us are showing more signs of stress and disrespect riders because of this. And while it is nice to hear that some bus services is being slowly restored after years of cuts, TriMet hasn't done anything to make transit more affordable for riders. What good is a bus that works if the prices are too high for us to use? Might as well not have a bus at all if we weren't able to afford the trip. How is it fair to pay for a 2-hour ticket for $2.50 when your fare has expired before arriving at your destination, or you haven't even traveled very far to make a quick stop and your fare has expired before you can get back on the bus, we are forced to pay for another $2.50 fare to finish our trip and get back home for our destination. How does it make sense when you pay $5 for an all-day pass that lasts us 24 hours, but a $2.50 fare lasts us only 2 hours? Did we not all go to school? $2.50 is half of $5. So why isn't the $2.50 fare good for 12 hours? Or if it's the $2.50 for 2 hours that would really matter to TriMet, why are we being forced to buy a full day pass for a whole bunch of travel time that we don't need? Why should we be robbed of both our money and our time by TriMet? For half the amount we pay for a day pass, we should at least get half the time. But we know TriMet will not do this because they want money and don't care what the people can afford to pay for time they aren't using on a day pass. TriMet needs to provide us with more than 2 hours on a single fare, or it should be cut back the prices as an even better solution. The fact is, for me and my family and my friends and many other people I know, the fare is just too high. Can I continue?
Please.
And more time to travel on a single fare is the least TriMet can do. I depend on TriMet to transport myself everywhere. I don't own a car, and this is my first time coming forward to TriMet, asking for you guys to not let me down and prove to me you guys are listening to me. I'm not done. I'm not done. People like me who actually rely on TriMet know better than anyone what our beautiful city needs. Since I was 8 years old, I have used TriMet. My family and friends live all over this area, and I have to spend a lot of time on the bus to just live the kind of life that most people take for granted when they own a car. I live in Oregon City. My family lives in Cooley neighborhood of North Portland. My fiance is in Gresham, and my job is in Northeast Portland. I'm actually late because we were waiting for you guys to let us talk, but it seems that you guys have business meetings with the mayor and stuff. Anyways, TriMet is the only way I can get to where I need to be at all times, including my 2-hour trip from work and back anywhere I go. It takes 2 hours for me to go anywhere. Thank you for the bus lines and the MAX that make my life possible, but now I'm now forced to spend money on a monthly pass that is difficult to afford because daily or single tickets are too expensive for how much I have to ride the bus. Can you please hear the people's voices and take action on what we are telling you we need? Why don't you believe us when we tell you we need more transfer time and lower fares? Why don't you trust the people who actually use the system every day and whose lives depend on TriMet services? I know the ridership on TriMet is decreasing, but this isn't a surprise to riders like me. And it's not just because you have cut services year after year and are only now starting to slowly restore services to what it used to be. If you want more bus riders, lower the prices or extend transfers so we can get more for what we are forced to pay. Thank you for listening, but it's time to make a change. Actions mean more than words, and if you can't make a change to the fare or transfer policy, then maybe it's time for riders to demand a change for this board of directors. That'll be all.
Right.
Hi, my name is Nicole Phillips, and I'm a member of BRU and a transit-dependent resident of Portland. I'm also a staunch proponent of and advocate for mass transit. In the almost 6 years I've been in Portland, I've covered a large swath of the city via TriMet. Probably more than most, I've experienced the highs and lows of TriMet's efforts to keep Portland moving. Recently, I've become dismayed as TriMet has implemented extensive changes in pricing and service that leave none of us, transit riders, employers, or the businesses we frequent, unaffected. Taken separately, a change in service or a fare increase is a sometimes necessary part of operating public transit. Do these things all at once, though, and it begins to feel like an attack. It now takes my coworkers and I longer to get to work and longer to get home. The lack of north-south bus service turns a quick errand into an hours-long journey. Missed connections, drop-off-only buses, standing room-only vehicles. These are all now a daily part of riding public transit. Adding insult to injury, we now pay more for an overall lower quality of service. However, I'm not here to recap the decisions TriMet has made or reiterate why BRU and its allies actively oppose these decisions. But I am concerned about whether TriMet is aware of a standard maxim in marketing and customer service. People always remember how you make them feel. Running for a connecting bus because yours was late, only to watch the bus pull away because the operator couldn't wait the 10 seconds it would take for you to get there, leaves people feeling that our reasons for using transit are irrelevant. Aggressive fare enforcement focused solely on issuing $175 citations to as many people as possible versus issuing up warnings as appropriate and educating drivers about TriMet regulations in order to weed out actual fare jumpers leaves us feeling like criminals. Knowing that West riders pay the same $250 as TriMet riders for more comfortable, punctual vehicles with Wi-Fi, no less. While the TriMet board tables the vote on extending transfer times, leaves transit-dependent cash riders feeling victimized by an elitist system. Feelings may seem irrelevant, but like any service accessed by the public, feelings affect whether or not we continue to use the service. TriMet's changes can irrefutably be interpreted as hostile to its riders. And no matter how often TriMet may advertise new improvements or blame the union for its budget woes, refusing to address the core issues of transit-dependent people, hostile fare enforcement, poor service in East Portland, and complete denial of the cost impact of reducing transfer times, leads us to conclude that TriMet doesn't care about us, that we're paying for something not designed to serve us. We all need for TriMet to work in partnership with its riders, not against them or only for the benefit of a few. Because as people feel disregarded, disrespected, or flat out ignored, they will eventually feel that their only alternative is not to use public transit at all. We are all stakeholders in TriMet's success, and we all feel the pain when TriMet fails. Thank you.
How about Lynn Barrett and Amami? I don't know how to pronounce the last name. Hamima? Yes, please. Lynn?
Morning.
Good morning.
My name is Lynn Barrett. You've met me before, and I'm a resident of Rockwood and a member of Bus Riders Unite. I'm here today to address this board's complete lack of concern for your customers, especially the bus riders. You sit here and make decisions that affect everyone in the metro area, the employers, the employees, people who don't drive, and even tourists. This insistence that TriMet is providing even adequate service for all of these different types of riders is cruel. Why? Because you clearly don't know. Have you ever tried to take the bus in East Portland? Or tried to make a round trip on a single ticket? Accidentally got on the bus going the wrong way in a new neighborhood. Boy, that sucks. But none of you are regular riders and you don't know what it's like out there. I'm not able to go from my home to my post office to pick up a package and get back on a single fare. That's a simple chore. I live at 162nd. I have to go down to 122nd and Sandy to pick up my mail. That's crazy. I can't do it in 2 hours. I don't feel like you treat me, my time, or my fare with the same respect as you would as if it was your kid or your family members. You act like my time is nothing, but it is just as valuable as yours. Members of this board represent districts full of people. We are not a map. We are actual people. Take a look behind me. Do you really represent all these people? No longer will we take your word in good faith because you have a huge geographic metro area to move people around in, but you act like it's a game of checkers. When we see you out on the system that you govern, then we will return good faith to you. I invite you to ride with me any day. Have a great day.
Hey, why don't you pronounce your name for us again?
Halima.
Okay, please.
My name is Halima Abdullahi, and I'm Oakland Very Youth Leader. Today, I'm here to testify for all youth and those in the room with us today about our concerns about TriMet. Let me tell you my story and why we all need you to get this in your heads. I do not like the way TriMet is working right now. I depend on TriMet daily to go to my doctor's appointment, grocery shopping, etc. One time, my mother and I went grocery shopping, and because we're transit dependent and have a tight budget, we bought 2-hour bus tickets to get to the store. When we got to the store, we didn't have that much time to get all that we needed. We only had 30 minutes to shop for food to feed 9 people, and it felt impossible. So we didn't get all the groceries we needed because we had to rush back before our bus ticket expired. We waited and waited for the bus, but by the time it finally showed up, our ticket expired. We had to pay more money again just to get on the bus. Like I said, I am a youth that is low income, and TriMet is my only transportation to wherever I go. TriMet is also the only transportation for low-income families. What I'm asking is to put yourselves in our shoes and see how different our lives are from yours. See how much people are suffering because of the way TriMet is working now. See what we have to go through every day in our lives. I know some of you ride the bus when it's convenient, but none of you depend on the bus for your daily life. So don't tell me you know what people like me are going through. Another concern specifically affecting youth is the lack of service in East Portland and the high cost of youth fares. Since TriMet service is good in the Portland Public School District areas, they get Youth Pass. Portland Public Schools have Youth Pass, and East Portland schools don't. Do you think that's fair? No, it isn't. But we can't even get Youth Pass until our bus service is better. I live in East Portland. Every day I take bus 4 to go to 135th Avenue just to get to school. I pay for a single 2-hour ticket every day, and sometimes I don't have any money on me. I have to walk to school. By the time I get there, I don't have that much time to get to my classes. So please, TriMet, listen to our voices. We need Youth Pass for East Portland. Extra hours are a transfer for people who don't get Youth Pass and better service in East Portland. Please get better service out there and lower our fares. We need both. You may not, but we all do. So try to listen to all bus rider voices and our youth voices. Have an open mind to see what the system's doing to us. The longer you wait, the more we suffer.
All right, Cameron, come on up. Cameron Johnson and Susan Mund. Welcome, Cameron. We haven't seen you for a while. It doesn't seem
I know.
like-
I was worried you guys were missing me. I'll let you go first.
We'll see if we're missing you. One second. Cameron, go ahead and go first. Cameron, no, I think you're up.
Oh, okay, well then I will go. Hello, Mr. President, board members. As always, I'm Cameron Johnson, Vice Chair of the Bus Riders Unite. As a leader of Bus Riders Unite and past member of a few other committees, I've been involved in lots of plans made in an effort to help our audience, those who have been disadvantaged by the system, to find a voice and find ways to improve their transit system. It's been a hard fight because we've had to work with you as you throw curveballs at us, like tabling ordinance number 332 to extend transfer times. But the more I think about it, the more I realize how effed up is it that the relationship between the people and their transit agency is a battle of wits? Why is it that instead of making compromises, having talks, and actually being real with each other, you're too busy throwing hurdles and we're too busy clearing them? Even today, you moved the meeting to the very edge of the service area, but we adapted to that. We happened to make the 33-hour Bus Riders Unite mobile rally this morning. It was fun. I've been a leader at Opal for a while, and I've seen you at your best and your worst as an agency. Therefore, I see TriMet putting the transfer times on hold in response to our civil rights complaint is a new low. It's pure retaliation as you trying to avoid taking responsibility. I know responsibility. I'm 19 years old, and a large chunk of the Bus Riders Unite leadership team are youth like me. How is it us young folk know more about responsibility and accountability than you do? It seems like you're planning around Bus Riders Unite like you need to stop a threat, but we're not your enemy. If you keep trying to push it, we could become a very powerful enemy, but it's insane that despite our attempts to better TriMet, you treat us as a threat that needs to be subdued. We are going above and beyond the realm of logic to the point where we're fighting you tooth and nail in efforts to repair and improve the service. It is ridiculous that our attempts to help make TriMet a better agency is leading to our own punishment at your hands. It's my hope that you're able to come to your senses and realize that as a board member, it is not all about finances, strategy, or even personal pride. As a leader, I realize it's my job to make our team better, not to make your life worse. It's your responsibility as leaders not to carry out personal vengeance, but to serve the system and the people you would not be here without.
Susan.
So good morning. My name is Susan Mund, and I'm here as a board member to the Community Alliance of Tenants, a statewide tenant-run organization, the only tenant-run organization, as well as co-founder to We Are Rockwood, a Rockwood resident determined and run group. And as a Rockwood resident, and I've mentioned this once before about how difficult it is for our residents to get anywhere north and south, in our community. East of 122nd, there is no north and south in my neighborhood. 162nd, we have a new Ross at Division and 162nd. I can't get there. It's over a mile walk from Southeast Stark to Division. My health care providers are the Rockwood Multnomah County Public Health Clinic, located at 182nd, just north of Division. I have to walk again another mile to go to one doctor's appointment. Now, I'm an able-bodied individual, but then I think about my neighbors. Rockwood has about 37% of the city of Gresham's population. That's tremendous. We have the highest rate of poverty throughout Multnomah County, which is the highest density of any county here in Oregon. As TriMet board members, one, I'm going to look behind me again and see these are your constituents. These are the individuals in which you serve us. And when I look around and I see other individuals, including yourselves, and I'm going to say this as a constituent, I hope you start taking TriMet and have an understanding of what we go through. I would invite you all to come on a walking tour in Rockwood, a walking and transit tour in my neighborhood. Any Sunday, 3 o'clock, We Are Rockwood meets our neighbors at the Rockwood Library on the bus route number 20, and you can walk from 172nd off the Max. So I invite you anytime, please come and we'll give you a walking tour on a Sunday and how difficult it is for transit.
All right, David Frazier and R.A. Fonts. David Frazier's not here. Okay. R.A. Fonts, good.
Morning, R.A. Fonts, Lake Oswego. And before the general comment, I want to point out that, that West needs some combination of a 6-fold increase in ridership or an $8.50 surcharge in order to bring it to just a mediocre level of subsidy. Now, the new budget requests 2 new DMUs to provide a service level roughly equivalent to what it was supposed to be 5 years ago when it opened, about $2,500 a day. This is proof positive that there's not a chance in the world that West can ever climb out of its hole. It needs to be shut down. We need that money elsewhere. Now, autonomous vehicles, or AVs, are coming, and the clock is ticking. 2 things. First, shared AVs, robo-taxis, self-driving rentals, etc., could provide most local travel at a total cost of between 15 and 41 cents a mile, according to a Columbia University report. Without subsidies, that's without subsidies, shared AVs would offer faster, safer, more convenient, and usually cheaper rides than transit. Fewer than 6,500 shared AVs, just 0.5% of the current tri-county passenger car fleet, could potentially provide every single ride now taken on TriMet. What will happen to payroll taxes after TriMet ridership plummets? Second, eliminating human drivers will turn TriMet's model on its head. Cost per boarding ride will be cheaper on buses than light rail because of the latter's high fixed cost for right-of-way, signaling, and station maintenance. And that's not even considering capital costs. Tick, tick, tick. Just yesterday, CNET reported that when asked if AVs would emerge within 6 years, Dan Ammon, the number 2 at GM, said, "I'd be quite surprised if it didn't happen by then." Volvo, Renault, Nissan promised to have AVs for sale also by 2020. And other car makers are doing everything they can to avoid being left behind. The consulting firm IHS predicts by 2035 there'll be 54 million AVs on the world's roads, and remember, only a very, very few of these could dramatically impact TriMet. Even after shared AVs transform personal mobility, we'll still need TriMet to alleviate congestion and to provide service to those who need a person's help getting into and out of a Lyft vehicle. Nobody knows how soon they are coming, but before they do, TriMet needs to fully fund all retirement obligations, get completely out of debt, develop a new business model where AVs and transit complement each other, and build up a large cash reserve adequate to quickly convert TriMet's reduced fleet to autonomous operations. Thank you. Tick, tick, tick.
Well, that concludes people who've signed up. I did want to respond and comment on, for all the folks who are in the audience today. And I'd ask any of the TriMet board members to chime in here. First off, I want to thank you for making the effort to get in here today. I know it was difficult, and we are at the edges of our service district, but we feel it is important that we get out here in these parts of the community and understand what's going on. I also think you're working on a bit of old information. I think the majority of the board members you see now are becoming quite regular transit riders. I myself am one. I know that Director Stovall is on the transit system on a regular basis. I think Director Zaragoza is riding it daily. I think she actually rides to work one way and walks home the other way to get her exercise and being fit. And I know the other two members that I haven't mentioned are also on a regular basis. So we do understand the system. I also want you to know that we are keenly aware of the needs and the service that people want out there to provide better opportunities and access to jobs and housing. That is what we do. The last few years of the recession have been very difficult, and we had to make a number of really decisions that impacted service and increased cost to use the rider, and we understand that. What I really want you to know here is that this board was ready to take action on Ordinance 332 earlier this year, but because of the actions of Opal in terms of filing a Title VI complaint to FTA, we really didn't have any choice. And I want to make sure you're aware of a letter I sent to Jonathan Oster, which outlined the position where we are. And Opal's Title VI complaint filed with FTA alleges that TriMet violated the law when it implemented Ordinance 323, which standardized bus transfer times at 2 hours without first conducting a transit equity analysis of the impact on that standardization on weekday bus drivers. The ordinance that we were planning on looking at and taking action on to extend the transfer times from 2 hours to 2.5 hours also was being considered without the benefit of a transit equity analysis, because we didn't believe at that time it was necessary. We have been in conversations with the Federal Transit Administration, as this letter goes on to say, and it does not appear that they've addressed the issue of whether a transfer time change is actually a fare change, is what you're alleging. But FTA has advised us that a fare change that requires a transit equity, a fare change does require a transit equity analysis regardless of whether it involves a fare increase or a fare decrease. So I think that's very important. If FTA concludes that transfer time is a fare change, which is what the Opal complaint alleges, it would require TriMet to conduct the transit equity analysis regardless of whether TriMet is increasing or decreasing the transfer times. Accordingly, if TriMet violated Title VI when it implemented the first ordinance, 323, and then adopted 332 without conducting the transit equity study, we've actually be doing a second violation under what has been alleged by Opal. So as the board discussed at its January 22nd meeting, under these circumstances, it would simply not be prudent or responsible to move forward with Ordinance 332 until FTA has provided guidance on this issue of first impression. And regarding the status of Opal's Title VI complaint, on March 10th, 2014, TriMet did receive the notice from FTA, and we are going to be responding by April 11th, 2014 to let them know our side of what we think the issue is, and we will respond, and so the process is moving forward, but it will take a few months, I believe, for this to get resolved. So until then, Ordinance 332 will remain tabled. The other option, frankly, is for Opal to withdraw its request or its complaint and have FTA then say that this is a closed issue. I don't know whether they're going to be willing to do that, because I think this is probably setting national precedents and will be something they actually want to make a determination on. So I want to make clear that the reason we're not considering this is because of the what we feel was a surprise action by Opal filing this Title VI complaint. Well, thank you for your comments, but you're wrong. And so I want you to know that. And so once this complaint is resolved one way or the other by FTA, we will bring this ordinance back forward for consideration. So again, thank you very much for your time. I think we're going to take about a 5-minute break and then come back to, would you?
Actually, no.
Shoot. Okay. Let's take our 5-minute break.
Member of Opal. I worked sometimes with their knowledge, sometimes without the knowledge of the board, to try to come to a deal, an understanding, to do the right thing for these people at Opal, okay? I don't have to do this, but I did it. It was trying to help them out. And then, I'm not a lawyer, thank God. But I can look myself in the mirror and say, we did everything right for these people to make it better for them to live. And then we get blindsided, cold-cocked, as they say in my world sometimes, and we have to, as a board, have to take the responsibilities seriously, to be prudent and protect, you know, we don't want to get out there and get in trouble. How's that? So, that being said, I'll go take a break.
Okay, go ahead.
Actually, I do want to follow up with what Director Esmond said in regards to, I know Director Esmond and others of us have spent an extensive amount of time meeting with Opal and some of their members and members of other organizations in regards to this specifically. And as a board member, I certainly appreciate and respect, how they turned out and some of the cogent responses that they had and the comments that they had. Some of it's very, very helpful. What I find to a high degree, in my opinion, disrespectful, not helpful at all, is the individual attacks of individuals who work very, very hard to keep the fiduciary responsibility of this organization at hand. And if they were in the room, I'd say the same things. And the one thing that I find offensive is the perspective and the assumption that we as board members don't understand what it's like to be poor. We don't understand what it's like to be dependent upon someone else who doesn't have, or we don't have the opportunity to provide for ourselves. I was born to a mother who had 3 other children, and she was a single mom at the age of 20. I know what it's like to be poor. I know it's like the struggle. I know what it's like to put everything you have into every opportunity to take advantage of things that are generally out of your reach. So I sit here today with an appreciation of everybody's plight, not just the transit dependent, but everybody's plight. And so the efforts that I have made to get in front of Opal numerous times, in my opinion, have not been shared with the folks that came to this meeting today and shared their opinions. And because we have this, that's streaming, I will continue to put out there the opportunity to meet not just with Opal leadership, but Opal members also, so that we can have this discourse in a way that actually gives us an opportunity to respond to the individuals that were here today in a meaningful way and not just sit and get a unilateral attack in a situation where we don't have the opportunity to respond. And so, as I said, I greatly, greatly respect the travel that they made to get here this morning. I greatly respect their responses and their insight. but I'm with Director Esmond in saying that we've invested a lot of time and effort into making sure that we are very responsive to our constituents, our stakeholders, and our riders' needs. And in my opinion, I don't think that was respected today, and I don't think the amount of time that all of us have put into this have been shared with a number of folks that spoke from the heart and gave us their thoughts and ideas this morning. So with that, I will continue to extend the opportunity to meet with BRU members, to meet with OPAL members, and continue to have a discourse that gets us to something where we all find a mutual solution. Thank you very much.
All right, 5 minutes. let's turn those speakers on again. If I could ask the board to come back to their seats. All right, everybody. As the TriMet Board Chair, I'm going to call the regular business meeting for Wednesday, March 26, 2014 to order. We had our welcome and introductions earlier, so I'm going to jump now to agenda item number 2, which is the board reports. And I'm first going to ask Director Bethel to give us a report on the Committee on Accessible Transportation.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Transportation, Committee on Accessible Transportation, let me get that right. It has met and continues to meet each month. You have, board, you have received a copy of the highlights that are there. CAT continues to talk about those issues that affect the disability community, particularly those around safety, ability to be able to get rides, and some of the instances of problems, you might say, that they have generated or they hear about that we certainly do to address, and always want to give TriMet great kudos, not just because I'm a board member, but because they actually do this. They always do take the information, get back, and bring the response back to CAT for that in terms of those things, anything that they ask for. So we continue to, we'll be meeting again in April. No, we won't. Take that back. We won't be meeting in April because there's some special TriMet things that are happening that we've canceled out the meeting so that we can be present at those as well. So that's about it for the CAT report at this time, unless there's any questions from the board members.
As you pointed out, there was a lot of information in the packets. You folks talked about a lot at your last meeting. Is there any comments or questions for Director Bethel?
I just kind of question, since I don't follow this like you do, Dr. Bethel. How does TriMet as an agency stack up to other agencies, similar size, et cetera, across the country, as far as the CAT and accessibility?
Well,
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No. I can take you.
And I don't need the answer right now, but I just want to bring that up.
I can give you a little bit now and then certainly give you some more later.
Thank you.
I'll go back 2 years ago to the APTA conference that I attended in Seattle, actually, and particularly those areas that I tried to get into, dealt around safety, upkeep, but particularly the one around accessible transportation. And from what I gathered in that meeting, TriMet is probably one of the tops in terms of providing transportation and accessibility to our clients who need to travel. Certainly our cost is way, way better than a whole lot of others across the country, where we are just a few dollars or so. There's, in some instances, where, $8, $9, $10 per person in terms of doing that. TriMet has continued here, as I look at others, to increase its fleet, maintain its fleet, work with the providers to help make sure that the intake and delivery, and delivery wasn't the right word to use, the coordinating the pickups and drop-offs and pickups again have worked quite well in terms of helping maintaining the schedule and the ability to provide safe and accessible rides for our clients to and from.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Other question? All right, then, not on the agenda, but I wanted to ask Director Bethel to give us an update on the Committee for Accountability, which you agreed to chair, and I think has had its first meeting. Want to give us a little update there?
Well, actually, we've had 2 meetings already,
okay.
And as the board may remember, that we passed an ordinance to create the Accountability Committee. We've met twice, once in February, and again, we met in this month, March, and we will continue to meet monthly until the summer. Then after the summer, we'll revise what we need to do. We've spent a lot of time reviewing the web page, suggesting improvements to it as to how to make it easier for, I say, John Q. Average to navigate and ensure that it contains the relevant and useful information that the general public would like to see. We've had several tasks that have actually come out of TriMet's response to the state audit, including investigating the possibility of an ethics hotline. And we have already made a recommendation to our general manager that we would move forward with getting an externally managed ethics hotline where employees could report anything they wanted to anonymously. And we're asking that there be $7,500 be put in fiscal year 15 budget in order to do that. And our anticipation would be to have this particular service up and operating for employees by September 2014. This will allow employees to call in, give information. We have a company then that will do the tracking, the sorting, and then they don't do the responses. Wish we could pay them to do the responses, but they need more than $7,500. Then they will send all of those collective questions into TriMet, which then we'll have to do the answers. But being anonymous makes it very useful for them and an employee to be able to talk about or to report what they would like to report. We're also refining protocols of how we will assist TriMet in moving forward with posting internal and external audits of accountability of the Accountability Center website, and we'll be making a recommendation to the general manager hopefully by April 1st of this year in reference to that. So that's where we are in terms of that. We did get the committee up and running, and we're not trotting anymore. We're kind of running right now.
That's excellent.
Any questions?
Good, thank you. That is good. I'm pleased to hear that.
Thank you.
Look forward to the, I guess, the go live on the ethics hotline when it's ready to go.
Hopefully, I'm sure we won't have any problems with going live.
I think he's talking about IT projects in general lately. Is that what you're saying?
Across the country.
Yeah, okay, all right, all right. Very good. So Director Zaragoza is not here, so I think we'll forego the report on the Transit Equity Advisory Committee and then jump right down to the Metro Policy Advisory Committee. Director Prosser, do you have any report?
Just real briefly, MPAC will be meeting tonight. We have been going through the Climate Smart Communities work and receiving briefings on that, and that will actually continue tonight. But the primary items tonight will be a review of the Regional Transportation Plan. This is not this is not a wholesale update, but rather a truing up of the Regional Transportation Plan to some of the changes made in local transportation plans. So we'll get information on that. And then also we'll review the draft Regional Active Transportation Plan, which will also feed into the other plan. And then we'll get another update on the Climate Smart Communities from staff. So moving forward.
That meeting was again when?
It's tonight at 5 o'clock at Metro Regional Center.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the report. Any questions or comments? All right. The next concludes the board's reports. Let's go on to item number 3, which is the general manager report. First year general manager comments, Mr. McFarland.
Mr. Board President, members of the board, and our Oregon City audience, I want to thank you for the opportunity to present a few comments. I also want to just, again, offer my thanks to our representatives from Clackamas County, I think most of which have moved on by now, but nonetheless, I really do appreciate them coming out to meet us. I did want to just give you a little bit of an overview of our service in Clackamas County, and oftentimes we don't segment our service as we look at it since we're so fluid across all of these boundaries, and that's, again, one of the key advantages of TriMet service. But we do provide a lot of service every day to thousands and thousands of people here in Clackamas County. And let me give you just a few statistics. First, our service is provided by the West Commuter Rail, which serves that edge of Clackamas County, the Max Green Line, and we have 23 bus lines in the county, including 3 of them at a frequent service level. Last year, we had, in our view, 10.6 million boardings on the system in Clackamas County. That's people stepping across the threshold of the bus. In addition, we serve over 1,400 Lyft customers here on a regular basis in Clackamas County, and that equated to about 145,000 Lyft trips on an annual basis. And again, those are essential lifeline trips, as Dr. Bethel reported on. And again, I think the service is of a high quality. And you know, we have a lot of Clackamas County residents as our employees as well. Our last count, 508 of our employees are actually residents of Clackamas County. And you heard mention earlier of the Portland-Milwaukee construction. There are actually 71 Clackamas County firms involved in our construction activities and doing work on the project. Total value of those contracts is about $40 million. And that results in the employment of about 662 Clackamas County residents so far. So that, we have a big presence in the county, and obviously that presence will grow as we prepare for the opening of the Orange Line in September of 2015. And again, preparations for that are beginning, and as you know, that's a major emphasis of our budget next year, is beginning to get ready for that September of 15 opening. Just to note a couple of additional updates related to the response to the Secretary of State's audit. Dr. Bethel reported on those that have under the purview of the Accountability Committee. But I'd also just wanted to note that we've made some great progress in setting up continuous improvement teams, as we call them, where we actually are involving our frontline employees in some of the decision-making that's necessary as we advance the project. And again, the audit suggested that we can do better on that, and we're in the process of trying to do better on that. And we do have committees associated with both how to better communicate with our frontline employees and asking them that question. The design, particularly of our operator workstation, if you will, on the new buses to make sure that the ergonomics of that are as friendly as they can be. We have a review of worker safety going on in our rail rights-of-way, which is involving our employees as well. We have a work group on operator restrooms that our frontline employees are participating in. We have a major revision of our rail rule book, which is the, if you will, the list of do's and don'ts associated with operating our rail vehicles. And again, that's involving frontline employees and our operators in particular in a very integrated way. Also implementing our new dispatch system. And we have a number of other ongoing transportation safety programs as well. So this is just the start of, I think, what we need to do to better involve our frontline workforce in really making us a better service provider for and a more efficient provider over time. I'd also just like to note we have some additional work going on with the ATU outside of the normal negotiations on the overdue contract, and that includes scheduling and hours of service as well as operator safety. So we're pleased to be working with the ATU on those topics. I also just wanted to note to you that our quarterly personnel action report is in your packet. Very little activity this month from the standpoint of non-union employees, particularly management employees. One temporary bump for unique services related to the Columbia River Crossing project. That was interim and obviously not continuing as the project doesn't continue. Also noted the number of step raises for union employees associated with implementing of our contract. So if there are any questions about that, certainly we're happy to handle, but pretty quiet report this last quarter. And with that, I'll pause for any questions, and we do have a couple of presentations that we'd like to share with you today as well.
Comments? Yeah, Neil, I just got a comment that I'm really glad that doing more involvement of the employees, getting them involved with decision-making, and because it's one thing to be, I guess, I say this, one thing to sit in an office and make decisions about, but the employees on the front line haven't been there in a sense, have a lot of insight into how to improve things for the agency. So thank you.
Appreciate that.
Why don't you move on with the
Okay, well, let me, we have a couple quick presentations here. One is we wanted to give you, related to safety and security this month, an update on TriMet security. And I know we have Harry Saporta here, and Sergeant Schoenfeld, and Commander Medica here. And I'm pleased that they're all here, please take it away.
Good morning, or yes, good morning. Sergeant Schoenfeld is with our Transit Police Unit, and he is also a sergeant in the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. So we're really pleased to have him as part of our team. And he just told me that he will be with us. He has been reassigned to the transit unit, extended to the transit unit again. So we're very pleased about that. This morning, I'd like to provide you with a brief update on our crime statistics. And I want to caution that this is really preliminary at this stage, but I thought this was very good news that I wanted to share. We really don't finalize the statistics because there's a long tail, unfortunately. It's because of the way the crimes are processed, the crime reports are processed. And we will finalize the data in April and with a formal report out in May. So I'll be back with that. But if you look at slide 2, you'll see that we had decreases both in bus-related reported crimes as well as rail. And it was 24% on the bus side and 27% decrease on the rail side. And this decrease was across all board. Oh, thank you. I didn't realize that. This decrease was across just about all areas. I think to a large degree, this is attributed to a variety of things. And our main goal here is to not only improve the security for our customers, but also for our employees. So the tactics that we've used and the strategies are aimed at reducing reported crimes against both employees and customers. One of the key measures is presence on the system. We've looked at how we deploy our officers. We looked at how we deploy our G4S officers as well and our supervisors. And our aim there was to increase patrols. We've also looked at partnerships. How do we strengthen some of those? And that's largely attributed to Commander Modica, who has met with all of the, just about with all of the chiefs of police, and to see is there a new way to strategize so that we can strengthen how we respond to transit-related incidents. We also, in 2013, developed a transit response team. This is designed to be very flexible to address a variety of issues. So we're looking at the crime data on a very regular basis, and Commander Modica then deploys the teams appropriately to respond to those types of incidents. That presence is not just uniform, but we also have employed plainclothes officers. And that tactic in itself has been extremely successful. Obviously, it's one thing to deploy officers, but we need a partnership also with our customers and our employees. And we begin to now educate the public on how to be attentive to their belongings. How do they protect themselves? So that's a key initiative. We have some ideas of how to strengthen that in 2014 as well. We've also looked at our physical security measures. I'm happy to report that CCTV is now available at every platform, so we have fulfilled our obligation under the DHS grant. But we're not stopping there. We're also continuing to make improvements along the in the area of CCTV, as well as making improvements through the concepts of crime prevention through environmental design. So in the next slide, you'll see that these are the preliminary statistics for MAX, the light rail line. And you'll see that just about in every area there's been a decrease in reported crimes. And in some areas it's been fairly significant. There is, however, a slight increase, if you go to the next slide, with the green line. But I think we need to put this in a little bit of perspective. So when we say slight increase, we're talking an increase of about fivefold, of about 5 incidents, not fivefold, but 5 incidents. So it went from 48 incidents in 2012 to 53 incidents in 2013. And the majority of these, over 50% of these, were crimes against property and not against customers. Nevertheless, we're still interested in how can we make improvements along the green line. We continue to look at the data to see where we can make some improvements. When we look at the slight increase, we looked at an increase of assaults against persons from 4 to 7, so an increase of 3, and then thefts from 14 to 16. Although these numbers are small, it's still of interest where we want to continue to make improvements in these areas. So we're working towards that. If you go to the next slide, I want to remind you that crime is relatively low throughout the whole system. In the rail side, it was down by 27%. At least these are the preliminary numbers. On the bus side, it was down by 24%. What's important also to remember is that the data drives the strategies, and that's why we always look at the data. Where can we make improvements? What kind of strategies, what kind of tactics can we use to drive those numbers down? What is absolutely key is presence on the system. We're trying to maximize that to the extent possible. Not only are we targeting the rail lines with our presence, but also the bus lines. So this is a tactic that's relatively new, where officers actually ride the buses, whereas before they were making contact with bus operators and passengers, but not riding the lines. It presents some challenges, and that was why. But through Commander Modica's review of that process, he came up with a strategy that appeared to work, and that's what we're employing right now. And we continue to do the investigations, trying to draw those nuggets as to how do we make improvements in the system. Now, all of this also has a role for the Orange Line, and I wanted to just provide you with a brief update in this particular area. One is to build our partnerships with Clackamas County Sheriffs and the Milwaukee Police Department. We continue to meet with them. We will be meeting with them on a more regular basis to really focus on the specific strategies for the Orange Line. There may be some things that are unique, that are different from the other lines, and that's what we want to focus on. Obviously, as I've mentioned several times before, presence on the system is key, so that's going to be one of the main objectives. How do we maximize that presence? And obviously, looking at the data, we'll be looking at the area that currently surrounds the Orange Line in the Clackamas County area. What does the current crime look like? What does the current crime look like? Develop strategies to address that, because we know that crime on the system is a reflection of crime in the area. So we want to focus on those particular issues and then look at the data that was before the Orange Line arriving, and then what does it look like after it arrives? And are there any other opportunities to make some adjustments in those strategies and the tactics? So Commander and Sergeant Schoenfeld, I don't know if you have any other comments to make.
Good morning. I have a few comments, and I think it's important for me to maybe explain a little bit of my vision with regard to the Transit Policing Division. Obviously, when you have a law enforcement entity, you're going to engage in suppressive activities. You're going to suppress crime either by interdiction or apprehension. But more importantly, now and for the future is building a legitimacy with the ridership. Just as we build legitimacy with the general public that populates our city and our Tri-County area, there are several ways that we're engaging in this, and particularly starting with our youth ridership. In our police bureau, we talk about crime and the fear of crime. Well, anecdotally, qualitatively, ridership, when they interact with youth, many times are put back a bit. We feel like engaging with the youth population helps them turn into a better ridership and a future adult ridership. We talk in terms of fair is fair. You've got to have your fare. If we deal with you because you don't have your fare, that's fair. We want you to protect your belongings. We want you to respect the ride. And so people say, well, how have you done this? We did a beta test with one very large Portland Public School high school. We met with the ridership we thought were having some of the most difficulties using the system, whether it's minor issues like not observing the pedestrian cross signal, or just generally fooling around, not paying attention on the platform, putting themselves at danger, or their mates at danger, or other pedestrians at danger. The other piece that we are engaged in currently is reaching out. So there's the Multnomah County Youth Council, and they do an annual youth summit. So we have a position there to provide an abstract and also participate in the workshops. We also are outreaching to them with regard to a transit-specific summit that they're going to engage in mid-May. And I might add that they have a lot of interaction with Opal. We are very sensitive to the fact that, quite a few of our youth are on the line, whether it's the train or the bus. For example, in the city of Portland, 13% or more of the kiddos live in affordable housing. You know what the footprint of the transit system is. This transit system is their main opportunity for transportation, not only for them, but for the people that care for them or have custody of them. We find that tri-county wide, the demographics are changing. 1 in 3 new kiddos going to kindergarten are of color. We push that out 60, 120 months. Those are the same kiddos that are going to be riding to middle school if there's no yellow bus service, or using our transit system to get to and from school and their other extracurricular activities. And so we find that this fear of crime associated with young people that use the system is a very important piece for us to be involved with, to help distill that fear of crime. And then additionally, within the city of Portland, we have currently a strong analytics program. So we do a lot of predictive policing. With that, there are established neighborhood involvement locations, places where there are calls for service created for the presence of law enforcement. We participate in that as we are able to, depending upon the calls for service that are transit specific. Incidentally, I want to mention to you that we have quarterly meetings with our partner agencies. And so this issue of equity and diligence to the community and building a relationship is very important. It is my intention to speak about this and also access what the other agencies are doing with this in mind. Because the system is tri-county. Our officers come from 17 different agencies, and then our partnership with TSA, that's 18 agencies, 62 officers. And so this demographic change that we speak and look at, it's happening in all 3 counties. I think the ridership is going up, as I've heard earlier, with the millions of boardings. And the issue of safety on public transportation is a national concern. A little bit of the increase that you saw in the statistics, I think, reflects some trending with regard to people not taking care of their electronic devices, not paying attention to how they hang their bikes. Not that the victim is the person at fault, but we really need diligence on the part of the customer. And so that's part of our outreach as well with regard to education. And then finally, I'd like to say you've got one of our finer members of the Transit Policing Division sitting right next to me, Sergeant Lynn Schoenfield. And I'd like to give him the opportunity to talk about what he sees at the South Precinct that he helps supervise, and also maybe talk about recent experience he had doing his job for us.
Well, thanks for inviting me here. I've been in police work for about 23 years. Prior to that, I was an engineer, and so bear with me when I don't want to deal in the analytical anymore. I want to be subjective. I'm recovering. But what Mr. Saporta had said about presence on the system, and that platforms, rail stations, they reflect the crime that's happening in the community is so true. And we discovered this years ago through those yellow surveys and whatnot that were being hung on the MAX lines, which was a great idea to survey just the average Joe that's riding the system, and they just plain like to see a uniform on the system. And so taking that comment, it makes sense. When you drive down a road, like say McLaughlin Boulevard, or those areas where you see police officers doing a lot of traffic stops and the lights are flashing and whatnot, for about the next year, you kind of drive slower on that road. Because as a just in case, not that you're a bad person, but you just know that they're out there watching. And that there's a production going on, lights are on and whatnot. 9/10 of those are warning citations. It's just, it's almost like an educating the public. So when Harry talks about having a presence on the system, having that uniform on the system, making the stops, and what I like to tell my guys are, if you're taking enforcement action, make a theatrical production of it. Does that make sense? You are under arrest, okay? Place your hands behind your back. A, it's really safe for us, right? B, no questions about it. And C, the people see it and they say, there's a group of cops doing their job, all right? And so my success, or my guy's success, and I'm sure it's the same with the other transit precincts, are the amount of people, no matter what county you're in, that walk up to you and say, hey guys, thanks for doing that. We really appreciate that. Whether it's the guy that's acting up on the train or on the bus, and you just escort him off and see you later. But those little thank yous are worth like 100 of the regular stuff that law enforcement gets, because they do have to suppress criminal activity. And so they do find the brunt of the negative ends of things. So that's how I measure my guys' success. So presence on the system, all right? And it's a double-edged sword. It means you'd better be gleaning the best officers from these 17 different agencies. Because if you don't and you make a mistake, it first shows up with all the complaints coming in, all right? And so what we've done over the years is we kind of know where that officer is going to be, which precinct of the 4 precincts, and we let the supervisors in on that interview process, and we let the home agency as part of it. It's a really cool process that kind of involves everybody, and using peer reviews from their own agencies. Will this guy make a good person? Because on transit policing, you can't just hide in your car behind the engine block. You have to get out and talk to people 100% of your day. So you better hope you have the best officers that put the best face, not just for their home agency, but for the transit police. So we glean very good officers. And the interesting thing is, with that attitude of being officer friendly, so to speak, you also get officer that's very tactically sound and safe. You also get the officer that takes that little bitty theft of services, that transit fare violation, theft of services, and you just know something else is going on, and you can build that into something that is very beneficial to keeping this person from riding the system. A is A. If they're gonna be a problem to the system, they can't mix with the good people riding transit for a while. You just got to call it what it is, and then act on it. And your good officers know how to do that. And that's what's kind of nice about being able to take the cream of the crop from the various agencies. And it's kind of fun after 23 years of police work. I've supervised SWAT teams. I've supervised narcotics units. I've supervised just about every type of special you can be on, but never able to get 17 different agencies' best cops to do what they do best. And being part of the selection process is really important there. Now, reflecting crime is a reflection of what's going on in the community. I mean, it's never so true, because you can just draw a a circle around transit platforms, and you can, your crime rates can almost compare to exactly what that crime rate is around those areas. And different things will influence that, right? I think the commander will agree, one of the influences I see being a police officer lately, it could be as simple as a transition between drug of choice in the area. We've been inundated over the last 10 years, since the mid-90s, with a transition into the heroin realm of things. It's a different ballgame when it comes to criminal activity to support that habit. We're seeing a transition back, and it's been the last half a year to a year into the methamphetamine realm. So I don't have a crystal ball, but I can be a predictor that is car break-ins, car thefts, quick grabs, apple picking of the phones. You're going to see a little transition back because of that aspect, and that has more to do with the national issues why those things are seeing a raging comeback. So having good police officers that understand, it helps you to direct what should you do, what types of tactics should you use to handle those issues. Like the commander said, a couple of years ago we had a youth issue on the line with the flash mobbing, things like that. We came up with a very strategic plan to address it, and we were very open, theatrical about it, and it went down. We don't see the flash mobbing on the Green Line anymore. And now, as far as tactics for the Orange Line opening up, we saw, of course, you have that Green Line opening up, boom, there's going to be a spike in something. There's always been crime down around the Clackamas Town Center Mall, all right? I've worked there for 20 years. I know that. I've been stationed there on the gang unit there. Okay, there's always been crime, and you know what? People still rode the 72 down there, all right? Now there's just, when it started up, there was just an easier way to get down there, an easier way to get back, and we saw a spike in activity. And now we're seeing the steady state happen now that it's 5 years later. And you're seeing a steady state. So it's going to be neat to see the next trending of the next few years, because you're really going to see that what's happening in the communities around these areas really reflect on that crime rate. Right? People are actually are discovering too, waiting for a Green Line to get away from the town center on a shoplift, it's not a good idea, because we're going to be standing up there, and for a couple of years I called it the Clackamas County Catcher's Mitt. Right? We're going to be there. All right, so now with the Orange Line coming in, it'll be interesting. And I said this to the Oak Grove community program. It's going to be interesting seeing that Orange Line into a residential area. But that doesn't mean we can't set up the strategies and tactics that we're going to use there. Number one, like Harry said, presence, presence, presence. We spend more of our time in South Precinct on that Clackamas Town Center platform and that Fuller Road platform just being present. People know that, you just don't use that anymore during midday shoplift or whatnot, because we're there. Be a lot of presence on that Orange Line. Setting up things ahead of time, like the nature park that's going to be there at the end of the Orange Line. Setting it up with the county so that we have a very thorough and clear process of excluding people from the park. We all obviously have a great process for excluding people from transit, but having things put in place ahead of time. And then, of course, having the personnel that it takes to make sure you have presence. That's the problem with presence, is it takes personnel. And when you add on to that, when you're not there on that transit platform and having that presence or being able to get there right away, having what our commander does is having that relationships with the outside agencies that patrol those areas, and having district cars that don't say, I'm not going to take that transit call, but having guys that want to jump out and do that. And we have across the system, all 17 agencies. If we're not able to be there, with 62 officers, we'll have, maybe a fifth of those on duty due to shift work, that they will be there for us. And likewise, if it's a call that we kind of stumble across, we're not going to say, hey, let's get the district car here, because how many they take for us. So we have a good relationship that way. And so I measure our success too by how many times the Portland East Precinct Sergeant comes up to me and says, hey guys, thanks for taking that. Your guys really, and then vice versa. It really is an interrelationship that has to be nurtured, because one little thing can throw it off, and it's a balancing act. So
we'll be providing more detail when we do our full annual report as to We won't share the tactics with you, the specific tactics, but we will provide more detail about the strategies. And I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Please.
Go ahead, Travis.
Just one quick question in regards to the chart. Is this actual or is this in hundreds?
Oh, that's actual.
So as I look at this, so this is for the entire month, and these are actuals.
No, this is the.
Well, this is for the
A
time
year.
frame, but each of these
Yes,
data
yes,
points are
yes.
for a 1 month time frame.
Yes.
So then, let's look at January 2013. So this is basically saying we've had roughly 60 crimes across all modes of TriMet.
Yes.
And we carry 270,000 people a day, roughly.
Yes.
That's pretty impressive.
It's they're very, very low numbers. This is, we're a small city. So it's a moving sidewalk. And the numbers are very, very low. And that's what I hope that most of our riders and others understand, that I think we do I will say it, I think we do an excellent job of keeping crime on the system as low as possible. There's still room for improvement. We're always looking at opportunities.
We could go to zero, but that
We
I
can't go
think
to-
is a. I
As
think
long as we're
that's
dealing with people,
something-
I don't think it'll ever go to zero.
exactly.
But
Exactly. One other follow-up question to that perspective. These are all reported crimes, correct?
Yes.
So so essentially we do have unreported crimes.
Yes.
Even if we take that in consideration, I know this is going to be conjecture, but I'm sure there's some type of data out there that says for every reported crime, you may have 1.5 unreported.
I don't want to speculate. The commander, I think, is much more knowledgeable in that area than I am, but.
Nice handoff, Eric. Very nice. Thank you. I can get that for you if you really want a factual basis. I try not to speculate with things such as this. One point I will say is that, the more analytics and more data we apply, you will see your measurements change. And so we're talking, for the most part, Part 1 crimes. So then there's lower level crimes as well that may not be included in the count, as well as those that you referred to that go unreported. But we're the 25th largest market in the nation, and I think that the work we're able to do with the capacity we have is pretty strong.
Those are considered what I call quality of life issues. Loitering is an example of that. So that's not included in this count. But nevertheless, they're important, because if our customers see someone loitering, that gives them a sense of uneasiness. And we want them to be comfortable. We want them to understand that it is safe to ride transit. And by having that presence, by frequent patrols and using other types of strategies, that's the message we're trying to convey.
This is also one of the fear of crime issues, and especially as related to youth and or those that are experiencing homelessness. So, there's a whole service aspect that we also have an expectation for our staff members to present to the public. If there's a need, why were we going to criminalize somebody that has a need? We're going to try and connect them to the services they need. It might even be a courtesy ticket to get from one point to another. But those type of things, loitering, is it scary to you? Is it scary to the general public and the ridership? I think it depends upon who you ask. And really, if there's no governmental interest for us to be involved with folks and criminalize them, we're not going to, and so you won't see that reflected in any statistics.
So even if we grossed up these numbers a significant amount, we still have a very, very, very low crime rate when you're transporting 270,000 rides per day. I'm amazed by these numbers. When you combine that with the fact that just another couple of evenings ago, I was at a neighborhood meeting representing TriMet, and, you know, two of the people spend an extensive amount of time on the perception of safety with TriMet. And you look at these numbers, and it's just interesting, sometimes the disconnect between the perception and kind of what these numbers are telling us. So my hat's off to all three of you and the rest of the team. They're doing a phenomenal job in working with this situation.
We appreciate that. The fear crime issue does not miss us, and as well, I think the stats are reflective of the crime rates are down in the full metropolitan area. It's at a 10-year low. So as we reflect the neighborhoods and the city's population, I think that's a result that's reflected in our statistics.
Keep in mind, too, there's a proactive aspect to having presence on the system and having good cops on the system and being able to glean those officers. They will go out and they will be police officers on the system, and they're not always running from fire to fire. So if you have good cops, they stay busy, they don't covey up into a coffee shop somewhere, and they just stay on the system. And then you'll see the statistics like self-generated activity go up too. I mean, I've never seen it like working for this agency in TriMet Police. I can't even say that about my home agency. I mean, this is an active group of officers.
Thank you.
You done?
All done.
Director Esmond, do you have a question or comment?
Very quickly, because I know sometimes how is the response from the operators? The bus drivers, the light rail operators?
What is the response from them?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine
there are concerns, and we.
But having more of a presence, I mean, there's been.
They welcome the presence, right. And the operators do have concerns, and we're working closely with ATU to make improvements.
Right.
One of the outcomes of that discussion was re-examining how we can deploy officers along the bus lines.
From their input.
Yes, and
Absolutely.
so we are now doing that. We've developed a specific tactic to engage with the operators on a more regular basis.
And at the end of this tactic, we actually let them know who we were and what we were doing, and they're like, oh, man, thanks.
You know, additionally, some of the drive, the anecdotal or qualitative data that we used were from the riders, the customers, who made it known that they would appreciate seeing additional presence on the bus, at the bus stops, at the transit centers. And so we've endeavored to do that. We think that we've gained a good result. And, you know, it's just part of our overall strategy.
Good. Thanks for your work. Appreciate it.
I guess I just have one question. It feels like the saturation now of the televisions, closed-circuit TVs on the platforms, as well as the cameras on the buses, also are a pretty good deterrent. It feels like, you know, I would think the bad guys are pretty aware that they're being filmed, and it seems like we've been very good about, you know, apprehending people who did crimes on buses, as an example, in just the last few months.
Cameras are a deterrent, and we try to let the public know that when you're on the system, and you commit a crime, you will be apprehended because of the camera system. We have more plans to make even further improvements in that area.
It also helps with alerting the public. Our last two apprehensions of individuals that committed crimes against customers or disruptions on the transit line were a direct result of us having those images that we could put out publicly. And we were able to identify two individuals who were ultimately apprehended.
Yep. Yeah. Good. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time, and look forward to having a report after the orange line is opened up. Sure. Mr. General Manager, you want to go on to the last report?
Yes, I want to do a quick time check. I think we can do this in, what, Alan, 10, 15 minutes?
How about 10? Name that tune in 10, okay?
So we'll push it, 10. Talk fast, but it's a very important presentation. This is about the service enhancement plans, and about a year ago, we gave you a presentation on where we were with the West Side Service Enhancement Plan. that work has wrapped up, and many elements of it have actually begun to be implemented, and we wanted to give you a report on that. But also give you a view of that future about other areas, including the area that we're in today, about how we're looking at that service. So Alan, take it away in 10 minutes.
Quick, I'm joined here by Steve Kautz on your left and Tom Mills on your right. Tom is the lead of our West Side and Southwest Service Enhancement Plan, and Steve is the lead of our East Side and Southeast Service Enhancement Plan. So I will, but I probably won't let them talk because we'll try to get through quickly. There we go. Just briefly, talking about service enhancement plans, as Neil mentioned, I gave a presentation to you last year at this time when we were really focusing on the West Side, because that's the first one we did. And Board Member Prosser, you asked for us to come back each year and kind of give you an update, and so I'm happy to do that and tell you that we've really made some strides in starting some other sections as well, and we're really kind of rolling on all of them in many ways. Very briefly, what we're really doing here is making sure that we do as much engagement with jurisdictions, stakeholders, the public, businesses, neighborhoods, everybody we can get to, and everybody who's willing to spend some time talking to us to understand what are the current needs, what are the future hopes, what are the visions for the community's growth and for mobility, and what kinds of ideas are there out there for what we should be doing in the future. We take all of that, we try to put together sort of a shared vision for what that transit should look like in the future, make sure we really test it with all of these stakeholders, and then try to finalize that. We've got 5 areas that we're working in that split the district into not exactly 5 equal areas, but 5 kind of achievable sections to talk about with the number of different jurisdictions and all the issues with service planning. The timing is the West Side, a service enhancement plan in some ways is never done because it is a vision that each year we have to take steps towards implementation. But in terms of creating the vision, the West Side vision has been created, and we're moving towards implementation on that. For the East Side, you can see, and Southwest, Southeast, and North Central, you can see the timing of trying to kind of we're really in the outreach stages now, trying to test ideas later this calendar year, and trying to get to the point where we've got a vision, set of visions in the 2015 and 2016 range to really to have something that portrays what the entire region is looking for as well as we can. And with all of these, we're trying to learn as much as we can, understand the needs, and do what we can to respond to those. We learned a lot on the West Side about the growing employment and the growing neighborhoods and community college enrollment, which was rocketing, which is a perfect mention given the place where we are right now. And what we looked at was really creating a vision that creates more connectivity, is more of a grid, has more frequency, makes more connections from one place to another throughout Washington County, throughout the West Side area, because that's what we need to be able to provide the mobility that people are looking for and to meet all of the long-term expectations that we have to help reduce congestion, to respond to emissions needs, the climate smart scenarios that was mentioned, all of those things that we have to deal with to be able to get people where they need to get going as efficiently and well as possible. So real briefly, and again, I'm focusing on West Side because that's the one where the vision has been completed. I'll talk some about Southeast since that's where we are right now. Really completing that grid of service, looking for new frequent service lines and adding frequency, and then doing priority treatments and other things to try and reduce wait times. Improving bus stops, really looking at how our partners can help us get people to our service, because we know all of our riders are pedestrians first and last. If they can't get to our bus stop, they can't ride our bus. Looking at solutions for the last mile, and that includes both our service and partnering with other agencies and even private entities to figure out how we can make better connections, and doing things like making bicycle accessibility and pedestrian accessibility as well as possible. And then community transit. How do you provide for the kind of circulation, the local circulation that you heard from Chair Ludlow earlier? So what have we done on the west side, which is the first one where we're really kind of delivering some of the things that were included in the vision. Very early on, it became obvious that Cornell Road should be a single continuous line, and we were able to do that early on, and before the vision was even completed, really. And that helps people get two different destinations along that line without having to get diverted or transfer. In this past year, we were able to realign the line 47 to give new access to jobs, to PCC and to Bethany and other neighborhoods. We increased frequency on the 48. We partnered on the Forest Grove shuttle. We're providing new buses throughout the region, which means that the west side gets new buses. And in the proposed budget that's in front of you in a couple of months for FY15, we'd be looking at adding additional service to the 54, 56, and 57. And this very month, we added midday service to those lines as part of the restoration of frequent service. So those are all items that were envisioned in the service enhancement plan and of benefit to the riders. The 47 and the 48, the 47 I mentioned, the reorientation of that line and the beefing up of frequency on the 48. Boardings are up 48%, and that's great to see. We need it to keep growing, obviously, but it's good to see that response in a relatively short time. In Forest Grove, we heard a lot about the need for local circulation. We looked at fixed route service, and there are no real key destinations. There are neighborhoods beyond downtown Forest Grove, but there aren't key destinations that are good anchors for fixed route service to be efficient. What we ended up doing was partnering, finding some federal funds that could be used with Forest Grove and Ride Connection to create what's called Grove Link, which is a local circulator, and their monthly boardings from the beginning, since they started in September 2013, have grown 40%, and it's a very popular service, as I think you've heard. So it's not just about the west side. Obviously, southeast is a focus, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But we've got a focus on all of these, and we're trying to move them somewhat stepwise. And in southeast, what we're hearing, you got a lot of what we're hearing. You got a great presentation from Chair Ludlow, from the Commissioner, from others this morning about what kinds of things we need to be looking for and what kinds of needs there are to try to address. Will we be able to address all of them? Well, we'll see, but we will do our best to understand what the needs is and use all of the tools in our toolbox to address those. So some of the things you heard were more connections in Oregon City, especially in the south end of Oregon City, and Chair Ludlow mentioned line 134. The reason that was cut was because it used to serve Canby. Canby withdrew from the district, so that service was no longer there. East-west connections, not just in Oregon City, but in the rest of the southeast area, and Gladstone and Oak Grove and River Grove, or sorry, not River Grove, Oak Grove. Evenings and weekend service, more frequency, and connections to places like West Lynn and Clackamas that, because the way streets pinch together, it's hard to make some of those connections, and so we're going to see what we can do. The timeline on this specific Southeast Service Enhancement Plan you can see in front of you. Basically, we're in the listening and engaging stage right now. What we'll do is float an idea this summer and get some feedback on that and start to understand how that looks to people. At the same time, or relatively the same time, we will also be sharing our initial concept of the service for Orange Line for September 2015. We're integrating the two. Obviously, the Service Enhancement Plan goes out 20 years, not just the first year, but we're integrating those two. Then we'll have a series of review steps, refinement, and come to a final vision by the end of 2015. All of this is kind of under the outreach strategy of trying to talk about TriMet's future in general. We've created a new section of our website, trimet.org/future, and people can go to each of these sections and learn about not only our service enhancement plan process about the transit network in general, but also about the high-capacity transit projects or planning processes that may be going on. They can also sign up to get updates and find out more about it. And we've got over 200 people signed up for email updates for each of the 5 areas to keep involved and understand what's going on. With that, hopefully I was at less than 10 minutes, so I'll stop and see if you have any questions.
You did really well. We'll see if we got some questions. You have a question?
Real quickly, Mayor Neely and Commissioner Pauly talked some about the new development going on. How do you approach that in the service enhancement
Yeah,
plans?
what we try to do is understand better, well, what has changed since the last time the service was really reoriented, which has been a few years. Basically, the last time we did a change really in Oregon City was when the Red Soils campus was built. We reoriented some of those lines. So what's happened since then, and then what's expected in the future to try and understand how to do that. Now, the services there, I mean, the areas they're talking about are really tough to serve with fixed route service and still be efficient, because there's not an anchor at the end. It's neighborhoods on the edge of the district. So maybe this is a place where we want to end up thinking about some kind of circulator like a Grove Link rather than fixed route service. But what we try to do is understand how much growth is likely to come, and then what's the best tool to try to address that.
Okay. Do you monitor building permit issuance and that kind of stuff?
We don't go down to that level of detail, especially when we're talking single-family homes.
Yeah.
What we do is we work with the jurisdictions to understand what's the broad swath, where are the movements really happening.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? I'd say thank you. I think you're right. We had a really good preview from the folks here about the needs, and I think parallels quite nicely what's going on the west side and the desires all over. I just would point out, I have heard from the mayor of Forest Grove that, again, they're very, very pleased with that, circulator that they have in town here. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of, if that's something that could be replicated in some of the other areas too. I'd look at this area as a good example of that. But I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with. So.
So are we.
Okay, yeah. So I guess you don't have to wait for a year to come back if you've got information you need to bring to us that we should learn about. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much for being brief. I appreciate it. All right. Do I need to get the Sergeant at Arms to go track down one of our
He'll be back.
board members? Okay. Well, I'm going to move on to the consent agenda. And there's 6 items on the consent agenda. And these are on there because they're usually routine and may be approved by the board in one blanket motion. However, any board member may remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion or questions, or by requesting that such action prior to consideration of this agenda. And if they pull it off, we'll consider it after the last resolution here today. So first off, I would ask if there are any items on the consent agenda that any members of the board would like removed. Seeing then, is the board ready to offer a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
There a motion?
So second.
I have a second. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? All right, then all those in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously, and with, I guess I'd note Director Esmond out of the room. So it's, we still have enough though, right? Right. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the resolutions then. We have 3 resolutions for us today. The first is Resolution 14-03-17, which is authorizing a contract with Innit Innovations for Transportation, Inc. for System Integrator Services for a Portland Regional e-fare system, which we heard a bit about, actually quite a bit about at our last meeting and briefing. So with that, I'll turn it over to the General Manager.
Mr. Board President, members of the board, I will try to be brief because you did spend quite a bit of time at your briefing on this topic. And you've also supported us in developing an electronic fare system with a number of past actions of the board, including contracts with engineering firms to help guide our efforts. Again, our objective here is ultimately to develop an easy-to-use, modern, account-based payment system that really enables almost any tool to be used: phones, credit cards, smart cards, to be able to access the TriMet system so that we thereby reduce the barriers to actually using TriMet. We're looking for a broad consumer network, and we're looking for a number of benefits for our riders. We think this will make the system easier to use. It will assist with pricing equity by allowing electronic caps to be placed on daily use as well as monthly use, so that the people who buy at a fare at a time get the benefit of discounts. We know that this will be developed in cooperation with C-Tran and the Portland Streetcar, so it will be a regional system with regional integration. And for TriMet, this will simplify our accounting and our controls. The intent is to reduce our overall collection costs related to TVMs and cash, and actually make, I think, the whole fare system much more reliable for our customers. We've been guided to date with the assistance of CH2M Hill, who has helped develop the specifications that led to this procurement that is in front of you right now. And just to note and to remind you that the electronic fare system really has a series of contracts. This is the first one. This is for the system integrator. This is the electronic, if you will, back-end and capability part of the overall system. There'll be other contracts such as installing the actual validators and readers at light rail stations, as well as a number of other separate functions. Just to note that this was a fairly standard two-step procurement where we actually asked for qualifications first, and we received a number of responses to that, and then selected 4 of the most highly qualified proposers to submit more detailed offers. It was also a selection done on a combination of both qualifications and price in the proportions that are noted in your staff report. I'd also note, and this was particular to Dr. Bethel's area of inquiry at the briefing, which is disadvantaged business was part of that overall qualification score and was indeed integrated very deeply into that. And related to that, we've continued our conversations with the contractor. And again, as you know, the original contract came in with a 5% disadvantaged business participation, but we have identified with them a number of other opportunities that they will be pursuing for disadvantaged business, including things like installing the actual readers or validators that occur on the buses. And those contracts occur later in the process, so we will bring those not back to the board, but we will integrate those into the contract within it as we manage the contract. With that, I would just note that, and it was the highest ranked when it came to the combination of qualifications and price. The price overall was about $14,353,000. Our engineer's independent cost estimate was around $19 million, so we believe this is good value. And again, we've had the opportunity to work with Innit in the past, and we believe they're a very high-quality firm and very responsive to their clients. So with that, we recommend approval, and certainly there are staff and experts here available to answer any questions you may have.
Good. First off, look to you, Dr. Bethel. Did you have your questions answered?
I want to thank Neil and the TriMet staff for preparing the information. However, I must tell you, after looking at this information, you further cemented in my mind that I am not convinced that Innit is the company to do this. Here's some questions. Number one, in terms of participation, I understand that you have increased some. That's going to come down later in the line. But even using 5%, percentages can do different things for us. When I look at the overall bottom dollar line, it just isn't there. It should be much higher. When we also talk about workforce diversity, they're average. Everybody else is good. They're average. When I look at technical approach, and this one really got me, in terms of service proven, the degree that proposal includes service proven components and software, the lowest ranked at 3.33, the lowest ranked out of all of the ones that we are considering. However, we rank them among the top 3 in terms of expected reliability and maintainability of hardware and software proposed. Those two numbers don't sync with me. If you don't have a proven degree of your components, then on the back end, you've got a great reliability that they're going to be, better. That's like taking a Hudson and laying it beside a hybrid today. It just doesn't compute for me. So I know I'm only the one person with one vote. However, before we get there, so it won't be any surprise, no, not in it.
We could certainly take some time to answer the questions if Dr. Bethel and the rest of the board would like. I can go through quickly, but I think actually to answer at least particularly the third question, I would need some backup from the staff.
And then let me put my final one on there. The one that seemingly for me, when I look at this, that topped them was price. Always the cheaper price is not the best price. Coupled with service-proven components, my question looms in my mind, is it a lower price because I don't know what will work, and we're going to have some experimenting, and on the back end, we're going to get a whole lot of change orders and requests because we didn't know, we didn't see, we found, and then it blows up and we're there at more. I just have a great level of uncomfortability, so I would like to hear some of the answers if the board would take the opportunity to listen.
You bet. Okay, let me ask for Chris to come up, Chris Tucker to come up and help me with some of the responses. The first thing related to the percentage of DBE 5, and again, I think what we've identified is maybe a potential of 8 that are in the follow-on later phases of work, additional 8%. But I would also note that by the nature of this contract, there is not a lot of subcontracting, and that makes it a little bit harder to bring the small business pieces into it. So I'll let Chris address that a little bit further. And then I'll perhaps ask Chris, who has the actual numbers related to the diversity score, the average versus good, and then the difference between proven technology and the reliability scores that were in the overall evaluation. So Chris?
Well, good morning, almost afternoon. I think the first thing I would say is I sincerely appreciate your insight. You've clearly dug into some of the heart of this contract, and it's something that was not lost on the selection committee. We spent a great deal of time talking about these very things. So I'll go through my thoughts to represent the committee and of course address any follow-up questions. I think on the subcontracting plan and the DBE participation, the 5% was by no means seen as high or stellar, and you certainly called that out, that there is tremendous opportunity. In comparison to the other proposers who were in the best and final stage, the 5% ended up being higher than most others, and especially those who've actually identified a subcontractor to do that work. But we didn't see that as still stellar. We have had conversations, and as you're aware, moving the needle forward on those opportunities. Because this is a system that is mostly developed in the back end, there's a significant amount of engineering costs and licensing fees that go into what it already represents. So what they're bringing to us is this back end system and their actual hardware validators, and that's a big piece of the work that they do. But nevertheless, the opportunities that we continue to look at with them as they become more familiar with this market is, in fact, potentially the ability, and I realize it's potential, but others have identified the potential for actual smart cards to be manufactured by a DBE, installation services, and some IT services that could be provided as we integrate this. I think the other thing that we were impressed with was the fact that they did bring in a DBE to project manage this and sit on top of the project, which we saw as a big benefit overall. And as I'd mentioned previously, that this is about half of the overall cost of the contract, and there are many other opportunities as we contract out, whether that be installing equipment for ticket vending machines or validators or other integration work that has to be done, civil work as well. So I know that I can't address the overall concerns, but We are very committed to it, and it is very committed to it from a DBE participation perspective, and we have to continue to work on that ongoing to raise that level. So from a DBE participation, that's, I can move on to the service-proven piece. I'm thankful that you brought that up because we spent a tremendous amount of time on that very topic and actually discussing how it ends up, you compare service level to maintainability. The service-proven component, the reason that they're lowest ranked is not because we don't believe that they can deliver it. We were very specifically looking at, do you have this piece of equipment in operation right now that we can look at and define how well and how reliable it is? The reality of it is we're doing some significant innovation of our own in this project. We were not able to look at a piece of equipment and say that's been deployed. Of some of the other firms, we were able to say, you actually have this equipment that has been deployed. And that to us was important to determine, can this work be done? Specifically, a validator, for example, that will be on all the platforms. It's a fairly simple solid-state piece of hardware, but they have not shown to us that it's been developed to work with an open payments account-based system. So we attempted to be very specific on our measurements and decided that because they have not rolled this out before, we cannot rate them as high as others who have rolled it out. Some who have rolled it out, however, were not necessarily rated as once they've rolled it out, that it was maintained well. So the difference is service proven was that it's been in function and they've proven they can develop it. But once you look at maintainability and reliability, the significant piece of that was how is it operating today for that agency? Have they proven to have equipment that's reliable, or does it have hardware issues that break down? When we compared that to Init, and we did extensive research and reference checks on properties that Init has developed worldwide, including our experience with Init's hardware at TriMet, we were very pleased to note and hear that the equipment that they manufacture and develop is extremely reliable and very easy to maintain. So there is a little bit of a leap of faith where we know they've proven to roll out significant technology projects that are complex worldwide. We have asked them to stretch a little bit on doing things they have not done today. So we marked them down on service proven, but we know that worldwide they've proven to have high maintainability of their equipment. From the change order piece, that's an important piece of this, because one of our fears was you get the lowest price, and with the lowest price, you're going to have issues delivering on what you need. We had in comparison to others who have proposed for this, price did not necessarily equate to agencies being pleased with the product received with some of the competitors. One very specific question we asked in all the references we made is Init a change order organization? Because what we don't want is to come in at a low price and end up having to pay for change orders over and over and over. We looked at this and found that every single agency we talked to said Init is not a change order organization. They meet their commitments, and if there's an issue that needs to be identified, their engineers are flexible, they're on site, and they address those immediately. So these were all very specific concerns we had as well, and we did our due diligence, we believe, in talking with several agencies to make sure that Init will be able to create the technology that we need and deliver it. The final thing that we were pleasantly surprised with is that Init is developing now an account-based system with an option for open payments in Finland, and in fact it's expected to roll out the end of this year. So this year, as if approved, we designed this system through the end of December of this year. By that time, they should have launched the system in Finland and then can repurpose a lot of that technology for the account-based for our system, which is in fact their plan. So we will not be there first, and they will be going through that process now, but I specifically identified a weakness of theirs, and we called them out on it, and we've taken them to task on it, and we are comfortable that they have proven to roll out the technology, even if it's a change or a new technology for them.
Does that make you feel any better, Director Bethel, or still where you are?
I'm still where I'm at because he actually raised some more questions, but I won't belabor it at this point can proceed as how we want
Okay.
to go.
Well, let's see where we are here. So how's the rest of the board feeling? I guess we want to make sure we're ready to move forward here if we have other questions.
Well, I appreciate the questions that Dr. Bethel raised, and I think they were worth getting more information on. I feel more, I feel comfortable after the presentation and responses.
Director Stovall?
Again, I would second what Director Prosser just said about Dr. Bethel. I greatly appreciate, the questions and the insight, and I appreciate the answers that we've received. I'm feeling pretty confident based on everything that we've seen in regards to moving forward with this contract. We certainly have seen a couple of software implementations statewide that have been a challenge, and we certainly don't want to end up there. And so where we are right now, we're going to be, I think, very, very focused on projects where we have some ambiguity. But with that, I certainly think as you look at these numbers, as you look at the qualifications and the experience and everything, even if you took 10 points off of their score, they're down to the second place. You'd have to take off 30 points almost to get down to where the other folks are. And so I think I'm feeling, based on everything that Chris has just delivered to us, I feel confident that we can move forward with this, at least from my perspective.
Okay. Director Esmond, any questions or comments from your side?
Yeah, I don't want to say no, but I don't want to say yes. I'll echo what Travis said about recently rolled out software, et cetera. And one of my other hats, I live in that world, but would it be the end of the world if this was delayed till next month? That would be my question. And I'm asking for that. That's what I'm asking. Is it the end of the world?
We're on a schedule.
Is there a legal thing and?
Here's, this, again, what it does is it stops the development of the process right now for another month. So what would the impact of that be in terms of our key deadlines, Chris?
Sure. And then I had a follow-up comment, if I could. I think this has been in process since October of 2012 in earnest with CH2M Hill as a technical services consultant. And I will say that with utmost sincerity, they've put their best team forward for us in this region, and that's one of the reasons they were selected. I would also say that I believe because this project has the interest of pretty much all of the United States, there's a close eye on this, and CH2M Hill has increased their likelihood and their success nationally, and they've drawn additional projects that are large projects that are on the tail end of ours. So as we've committed to the schedule with them, as our project ramps up, hopefully starting next month, as it winds down, they have other commitments they have to start. So we will be in somewhat of a conflict with their new projects that they have going on, but we want to garner as much of their attention as we can. Delaying any project, of course, has some costs involved. It's really difficult for me to account for those today. We have what I would say is I've put together a really good, strong team internally at TriMet that has been gearing up for this and is ready to tackle this. So it would be delaying things certainly delays that momentum and delays the preparation we've done to date. And also there's some conflict with CH2M Hill that we would work on and address down the road, but that would be the few concerns I would call out right now. The only other thing that I would say, the comment was, a big piece of this project we know is innovation. The team that was put forward by Innit also was one of the best that we've seen. They've put together, and one of their best engineers is moving here. And they have their senior project manager here and their project manager, and they've got some of their best from the back-end development. So it was part of our decision-making on what team did the contractor put forward for our project. And what I can say with a lot of confidence is Innit wants this contract. They put their A-team forward for us, and that helped raise our level of confidence in their ability to deliver.
I'm familiar with putting the right teams together, and the The first team as opposed to
Yes.
the 3A. Okay. So, but CH2M Hill was involved as a consultant for the bidding process and the evaluation process?
Yeah, they've really been an extension of staff for us. They bring the industry knowledge of rolling out smart card systems throughout the country. They've put on one of their very strong project managers and technical advisors as well. And so they continue to be a big part of this project going forward.
Okay, I just, if there's any way, could we take either a subcontract or internship within it for MWESB firms or just individuals to get exposed to that world, which is going to grow? That would be great. I will be, I guess.
Well, and just so you know where I am, I've looked at this. I believe the due diligence has been done. I think you have had the A team on this all along. But again, these kind of projects are scary because we are moving into developing new pieces of information. I also respect the comments and suggestions that were made by Director Bethel in terms of the performance on the DB and utilization of women and minorities. And so I'm prepared to move forward with this with some caveats that I think, number one, this is an important enough project. We probably need to have some regular updates on the progress and the budget. This is almost like the light rail project in many ways. It's just a different type of project, but I think this is really important so we don't get surprised and we know what's going on. And I think I'd also like to have some reports on a regular basis about their efforts to improve, frankly, their delivery and utilization of disadvantaged and minority and women-owned businesses, as well as some people of women and color in the workforce doing the work. So I think as long as it's very clear that this board is interested in those metrics and wants to have those reports, I'd be willing to have and would look for a motion then to approve, I guess, the resolution 14-03-17 with maybe the request for regular updates on the progress, now whether that's every 6 months or whatever we want. I'll leave it to you, but also some regular updates, and frankly, we want to see the level of performance from the contractor in improving their numbers on utilization of disadvantaged, minority-owned, and women and people of color in the workforce, if at all possible. Okay.
I'll second it.
Well, if there's other questions or comments? Dr. Bethel, you have any other comments? Okay. Well, with that, then I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 14-03-17 with the caveats and requirements that we put on, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Yay, opposed.
So, right. So I believe the motion is approved 4-1. Thank you very much, and we will look forward to some ongoing reports on this one.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's move on then to Resolution 14-03-18, which is authorizing a contract with David Evans and Associates for light rail bridge and tunnel inspection services. Mr. General Manager.
Mr. Board President, members of the board, since 1986, we've had an independent contractor do inspections on an annual basis of our various bridges, walls, tunnels, as they have been added to the overall light rail system. So this has been a continuing contract. This is a rebid of those services based on the timeliness of the contract. Just so you know, we have 58 kinds of structures that actually need that sort of annual inspection. Not everyone is inspected every year, so there's a bit of an uneven flow of work with it. Actually, 11 of those structures, we have the benefit of actual ODOT inspectors taking care of for us, so the balance, or 47, would be inspected by the particular engineers that we have under contract. We have gone through Brooks Act procurement, and I think the board has heard that explanation before, which is that is basically qualifications-based, and after we select based on qualifications, we have commercial conversations with the selected highest-ranked firm to make sure that they can deliver the services at a fair and reasonable price. And that is a federal requirement for these sorts of services. So based on that, the highest-ranked firm in terms of the qualifications was David Evans and Associates. And then we also included in our overall evaluation disadvantaged business participation. In this case, it's a 10% commitment for that participation. I'd also note that their DEA's workforce diversity is represented about 11% minority and 31% female. And I'd also just note that there is an uneven flow of this work when you look at the year-by-year allocation of work. And one of the main reasons for that is the tunnel isn't inspected at this level of detail every year, but it is on a regular basis. And so as you line out the annual work program and the assignments, there is a variation in dollar value through at each year. So overall, the recommended contract is before you at an amount of $741,000. That's the estimate. We'll do work programs each year to make sure that we stay within those overall commercial boundaries. So with that, be happy to answer any questions, but recommend approval.
Some questions for the general manager on this contract? Okay. Seeing none, is the board ready to offer a motion to approve Resolution 14-0318?
So moved.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions on the item or the motion? Okay, then. I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 14-03-18, which is authorizing the contract with David Evans and Associates for light rail bridge and tunnel inspection services, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. Moving on to the final resolution is Resolution 14-03-19, which is approving the proposed fiscal year 2014-15 annual budget for submission to the Multnomah County Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission. Mr. General Manager.
The board, we did have the chance to brief you on the highlights of the proposed fiscal year 15 budget at your last briefing, so I'll be particularly brief this time. But just to note, procedurally, this is the first step in our budget process, which is actually just submitting this for review for the by the Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission. As you know, they will do a report and actually join you in a public hearing on the budget at an upcoming meeting. I do expect lots of continued conversation. For example, at your next briefing, we're scheduled to begin to talk to you a little bit more about how this budget aligns with the strategic financial plan policies that you adopted earlier, as well as more details of the service plan, the capital investments included, including our recommendation related to the additional procurement of DMUs for WES. So we'll brief you more fully on that. And I do expect that there'll be adjustments to the budget as we go through the process and your review of that over the next couple of months. I would just note that I recommend your approval at this point in time. This is, I believe, a very favorable budget for TriMet, certainly compared to some of those we've seen in the past few years. There's no fare increase. There's the continuation of low-income fare mitigation program. There's substantial service increases, actually, by the end of this year, bringing us to the same level we were, or a little bit before, higher than where we were before the Great Recession. That service is really divided almost equally into two categories. One is responding to crowding and schedule reliability. The other half are actually coming back to our frequent service and continuing to add the intervals, particularly during weekday evening hours. It continues a continued catch-up on our capital expenditures and our capital state of good repair, and that includes continued bus purchases to bring our fleet up to the recommended age. It also includes the recommendations from the Secretary of State's audit that require additional resources. As I noted at the briefing, long-term, this does still require adjustments related to our long-term benefits in our labor contract. It's still key to our financial stability over the long run. And also, once that contract is either negotiated or arbitrated, we would be back to you with a reconciliation between the budget and that actual final contract. So again, the note, this is a process, this is to submit for TSC review. You'll still have plenty of opportunity and time to review this, ask a lot of questions, make some adjustments as we go, and we'll have briefings on this in both April and May. And again, public hearings available to the public on this in both April and May as well as our other outreach that we do online and through public meetings. So again, this will be back to you with formal approval in May, but again, many opportunities to engage on the budget conversation in the meantime. So with that, I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions, but do recommend your approval.
Questions, comments?
We should also clarify that the resolution also directs the deletion of any budget related to the CIC.
Thank you for noting that.
Yes. Very good.
Thank you for bringing up a sore point. I wondered if we could get, I'm still the new person here, and I still use that little leverage, whatever. How are things like in other municipalities? I mean, districts, budget, how much for capital, how much for wages, union or non-union?
You can certainly.
Just, I don't need a tome.
Yeah.
Neil, just
we can perhaps
idiot's guidebook, I would say, but you know.
Absolutely. And I would just say, particularly when you look at the newer western transit districts like TriMet, you might compare us to Denver or to Seattle. Every system has its own characteristics of age, and for example, right now in Seattle, they're going through really quite a funding battle, and there's a funding measure actually on the ballot upcoming that would actually preserve about 17% of their service that is otherwise threatened by operating cost funding. So we're certainly happy to
Either
provide.
Either formally or informally, that would be appreciated.
Is that a sales tax, by the way, out there?
It's a combination of car tab and other fees.
Good. Well, so we're ready to endorse this resolution. If we are, I'd like a motion then to approve resolution 14. Fair motion, a motion to approve resolution 14-03-19. Any further discussion, comments at this time? Again, before we take action, I would just say that obviously we do have a lot of time to make further changes to this, and I think since we have very few funds, we can make a lot. We're pretty flexible in terms of what changes we can make to our budget as we move forward. So for that reason, I'm comfortable with moving forward with this motion today. Okay, so all those in favor of the motion to approve resolution 14-03-19, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. I see nothing else that's on our business agenda. Does the board have anything else they want to consider today? I think we have an executive session, which we'll take a break from. I think we're moving to the building just to the, I guess, be the west of this one, right? Okay. So with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.